Good evening. I'm going to call to order the August 25th, 2025 meeting of the Policy and Services Committee. Madam Clerk, would you kindly call the roll?
Councilmember Liu.
Present.
Councilmember Stone.
Here.
Chair Vinker.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. All right, so we will now take public comment on items not on the agenda, but within the purview of the Policy and Services Committee. So not action item 1. But if there are any other general public comments with respect to policy and services, Madam Clerk, do we have any?
We do not.
Okay. And so with that, I will close public comment. So we will move on to our one and only action item for this evening. It is the discussion and recommendation to council on prioritization of potential approaches to address oversized vehicles, including recreational vehicle impacts, particularly relating to individuals living in vehicles. So I want to make a couple of preliminary comments and then move to public comment for let's start with our staff report.
Would you like to do that now, Chair?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's start with the staff report. And I want to thank staff also because this was a really well-developed, in-depth staff report that you put together. Clearly a lot of work went into it. So welcome, and please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chair, Vice Mayor, members of the committee, Ed Shikata, City Manager. I would like to just take a moment to kick off the staff presentation this evening. Thank you for the kind words. Really would like to give credit to Melissa McDonough, who will do the majority of our staff report this evening, assistant to the City Manager, and who has really led our interdepartmental team working on this issue. As we state in the staff report, homelessness is clearly one of, if not the most vexing issue facing communities throughout the country. And here in Palo Alto, the lion's share of the unhoused issues relate to individuals and families living in vehicles. And as such, we have spent quite a bit of time both managing the issues to date, as well as bringing forward some options for City Council consideration as to next steps. Next slide, please. Just to do a quick recap on what brought us here as part of the City Council's priority setting for this year, we included a objective to bring forward these options to address a variety of impacts related to individuals living in vehicles here to the Policy and Services Committee. We have noted that there has been a significant increase in both observed activity around the city, as well as concerns raised by residents and businesses. And as such, we are bringing forward a number of options for the committee's consideration for recommendation to the council. With that, Ms. McDonough.
Thank you, City Manager.
Thank you, City Manager. Next slide, please. For context, I'd like to start with some baseline information for you. We know from the 2023 point in time count that there were 206 unhoused people in Palo Alto, with about 88% living in vehicles. From anecdotes and observation, staff believes the number of vehicle dwellers has doubled since then. We'll know more accurate information shortly. The county city level data on the 2025 point in time count is due out in the next 2 weeks. As a city, we've done many things over the past 5 years to address and prevent homelessness. This includes our first ever Home Key interim shelter, which is anticipated to open in early 2026, our safe parking program that currently offers 22 RV spaces at Ging Road and 14 vehicle spaces at faith-based sites throughout the city. We've invested $57 million into affordable housing since 2017, including $5 million this year to the Charities Housing Project in El Camino. And we've expanded renter protections, added an outreach team, financially support a variety of services, and coordinate closely with law enforcement. But even with these efforts, the growing presence of oversized vehicles on public streets continues to raise concerns. Next slide. What you're looking at here is just an overview of some of the affordable housing throughout Palo Alto, both already here and in the pipeline. We know that beyond the approaches we've discussed tonight, or that we'll be discussing tonight, a comprehensive strategy to address homelessness in our community requires available housing for the unhoused individuals being assisted. This map shows the current affordable housing landscape, safe parking sites, the home key shelter, and below market rate units. The city has already entitled 401 below market rate units, with more on the way, and over 2,000 affordable units are currently in place. Next slide. So as I was mentioning, we've done a lot in the past several years. This year alone, we had a council study session back in February where we discussed homelessness in our community and the various ways in which we're addressing it. That was followed by the adoption of council priorities in May. In June, we discussed our gap analysis on homelessness with the Human Relations Commission, and they provided us some thoughtful feedback. In July, we began seeing growing concern from the community, including a perceived increase in the number of oversized vehicles and complaints about quality of life issues. These developments brought us to our conversation this evening, where we will be recommending a more structured, phased approach to mitigate some of the impacts associated with individuals living in vehicles. Next slide. As part of our analysis, staff identified a range of potential options to address the impacts of oversized vehicles, both supportive and regulatory. These are not mutually exclusive, and some could be combined or sequenced to form a more comprehensive strategy, which we'll explore in a few minutes in our recommended phased approach. Right now, I'll just be summarizing each one, but please note in the staff report, there's information on both implementation considerations and some initial resource estimates. Approach A considers expanding safe parking at the Baylands Athletic Center to add 10 to 20 more RV spaces. This could be in the batting cage area or the land facing the current safe parking site on the other side of Ging Road, or the baseball field. All of these areas are currently dedicated parkland and would require a vote of the electorate. Approach B would enable safe parking on commercial properties through agreements with willing private landowners. If viable sites are identified, the city could lease the space and contract with an operator to use it as a safe parking site. In the next approach, our existing congregation-based program currently allows overnight parking. We could consider expanding this to 24-hour stays, which are more practical for oversized vehicles. D would involve ramping up street sweeping and cleaning efforts on streets heavily impacted by oversized vehicles. The goal here is to address debris and storm drain issues, which are common community concerns. And that brings us to approach E, which would increase outreach and sanitation services like mobile pump outs, trash pickup, and increased outreach. It could also include new programs like an RV buyback initiative. Next slide. Now we'll look at some regulatory approaches. Some oversized vehicles are being rented out by third parties, so-called van lords, sometimes without the proper infrastructure for habitation. Approach F would establish a new ordinance prohibiting the rental of public parking spaces for profit. Importantly, it targets the van lord, not the person living in the vehicle, and aims to prevent the exploitation of our most vulnerable neighbors. Approach G is a more targeted regulatory option that would prohibit the long-term storage of non-motorized or inoperable vehicles like detached trailers on public streets. These are often a source of community concern. In approach H, the city would designate certain streets for oversized vehicle parking while prohibiting it elsewhere. This would allow us to concentrate resources like outreach and sanitation on those specific streets. Now, I'll briefly touch on two additional options that were evaluated, but are not recommended by staff due to significant challenges associated with them. These are more restrictive in nature and could have unintended consequences. Approach I is a narrower prohibition, which would implement oversized vehicle restrictions only on certain streets, such as those that are narrow, heavily trafficked, or especially impacted. It would be done on a case-by-case basis. Approach J, this is the most restrictive approach. It would prohibit oversized vehicles citywide. Each of these approaches I've just summarized comes with trade-offs in terms of cost, effectiveness, and community impact. Our intent is not to choose one over another, but to identify how some of these strategies might work together in sequence. Which brings me to the phased approach. Next slide, please. Phase 1, which would begin with council approval, focuses on actions that are more straightforward to implement, such as prohibiting detached and inoperable vehicles, banning the practice of vanlording in public space, and expanding cleanups and street sweeping. Phase 2 would begin concurrently with the implementation portion of Phase 1 and include designing a small-scale enhanced services pilot, seeking council direction on safe parking expansion, and exploring how to limit oversized vehicle parking to designated streets. These early steps build infrastructure and help with engagement needed for the deeper policy shifts. Next slide. In Phase 3, the city would launch the enhanced services pilot, approve and begin implementing expanded safe parking, and start developing a location-based parking approach, identifying where oversized vehicles may be allowed. Phase 4 would finalize this work, evaluate pilot outcomes, complete the implementation of expanded safe parking, and enforce new rules around designated parking areas. At every stage, though, staff will be evaluating what's working and adjust accordingly. Next slide. So you made it through 10 approaches, folks. I appreciate it. Given the complexity and the sensitivity of this issue, staff recommends phasing particular options which accommodate some oversized vehicle parking, increase regulation to manage street-level impacts, prioritize scalability and resource alignment, and is responsive to diverse community perspectives. Next slide. Staff recommends that the committee discuss the range of options presented and consider recommending that council adopt the phased approach. This framework allows for measured progress, starting with achievable, immediate steps while laying the groundwork for more comprehensive solutions over time. We recognize the tension between maintaining public space for all and offering dignity and stability to those living in vehicles. This plan strives to navigate that tension thoughtfully, inclusively, and responsibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McDonough, and also Deputy City Manager Cotton Gaines and Mr. City Manager. Unless there are burning questions from my colleagues, I would like to move to public comment since we have a lot of people here tonight. So welcome. We are glad that each and every one of you are here. We typically don't get many people for our committee meetings. And I see some familiar faces and a lot of new faces. So I'm going to make just some preliminary comments before we go to public comment, just to kind of give people a feel for how we do this. I am Vice Mayor Vicki Vinker, and I'm the chair of this committee, so I will be shepherding us through this discussion tonight. I don't know that it's a highly envied role tonight, given the complexity of the issues, the high frustration rate around this topic, and the challenges of finding solutions both long and short term. But it is a privilege to be able to help this city have this difficult conversation and to start working through these issues. So preliminarily, I want to emphasize a few things. First, I want to acknowledge the frustration. We recognize that there are serious concerns here, and that is why we agendized this item. In terms of our awareness, staff has already indicated, that they see this problem, that we have heard a lot about this problem, and they have worked a lot on this problem. So that is our starting point. So while we are aware of the problem, helping us better understand it and helping each other better understand it is something that we value, and you will have the opportunity to give your comments tonight. I also hope that you will share ideas about proposed solutions. We've just heard 10 options outlined by staff and a phased approach to implementing them. My colleagues and I also have thoughts on those proposed solutions, but we don't want to discuss them until we've heard from you. Second, we won't be making any final decisions tonight. The way our committee system works, any recommendations of this committee will then advance to the full council, and all 7 of our colleagues will get a chance to weigh in. There will be a chance again at that meeting to give additional public comment on the wisdom, or hopefully not the lack thereof, of our committee recommendations coming out of tonight. And I expect that this will be an ongoing conversation at council. While I hope we can get going and take some action that can get implemented right away, it is likely that those will be first steps, and this will be an ongoing process. Third, we have to operate within the law. There are a lot of state and federal legal restrictions that curtail or make very risky some options. And whether or not you agree with that law, that is a different matter, but it's something that our very able and accomplished city attorney has given us some private counsel on, and it is certainly important. And it's a shifting landscape. So the law is a moving target on this particular issue. There are some recent examples of where our neighbors in Mountain View and Pacifica have been sued after making decisions related to this issue, and there is some guidance there that we can learn from. And I just wanted you to be aware of that. There's also a pending federal appellate case that will be it will be controlling on aspects of this issue, and we don't have that answer yet, and we won't for several months. So that's just the backdrop. So regarding public comment, we welcome whatever you have to say tonight. I want you to know we've also read many emails. Many of us have talked to a number of residents, both impacted business owners and people living in the oversized vehicles, looked at pictures, visited sites. So just know that we're taking in a variety of input. So one pro tip about giving public comment, because we have quite a few speakers, listen to the others. And if somebody says what you were going to say, tell us, I agree with that prior speaker. I agree with Bob. And then add whatever is new or different. We'll be a little more alert. We'll be a little more on it. And we'll know that you agree with Bob. So that will effectively give you a little more time. Also, please know that we can't respond directly. So if you ask us questions, we're not allowed to engage in colloquy back and forth. And similarly, you're not allowed to respond by clapping or audibly speaking. It's okay if you want to twinkle your fingers in a silent note of applause. We will see that. And the clerk is going to announce the speakers in order and the next speaker. So if you're next, get ready to come up, and that way we can move through it somewhat quickly. So with that, Madam Clerk, how many speakers do we have tonight?
We currently have 29 speakers, one of whom is speaking on behalf of a group of 12.
Okay, let's go with 2 minutes per speaker and 8 minutes for the group. Thank you.
Our first speaker is Barry K., followed by Catherine T.
Are you speaking on behalf of the group? Yes, 8 minutes, please.
Long to finish clearing my throat and telling jokes. First, I want to thank the subcommittee, Vice Mayor Venker, Council Member Greer, Council Member Liu. I hope that they're paying you guys enough to go through this process. I'm Barry Cates. I'd like to thank you for letting me speak to you tonight. I'm here on behalf of the Ventura Neighbors Association. About a dozen of my neighbors have generously yielded their time to me previously, and another dozen or so, I believe, are here tonight who have done so as well. I am a active member of the Ventura Neighbors Association. We are representing approximately 400 households in the region bounded by El Camino to the west and Park to the east, and Page Mill Road to the north, down to East Meadow to the south. It's a pretty interesting area. I hope you've been able to spend some time there. We are homeowners and renters. We are fourth generation residents and recent arrivals. We are retired seniors such as myself and young families who are just getting started. So you probably won't find a more ethnically and socially diverse neighborhood in Palo Alto. We're not exactly what I would describe as one of the postcard neighborhoods of the city, but we are proud to be described almost every year by the Palo Alto Weekly as the most underserved neighborhood in Palo Alto. That's us. I've been delegated to speak to you on behalf of a fairly large number of my neighbors, of fellow residents, who are obviously concerned about the question of oversized and long-term vehicle parking in residential neighborhoods. So before I get going, could I just ask anybody in the audience who is in support of these concerns to identify yourselves by raising your hand? And if you're online, could you clap or do something online-ish? So I think that there's a large number of virtual attendees also. Good. So it's, I feel the need to inform you, in addition to the folks that have turned out tonight, there are a number of people who have spoken to me privately, but have declined to identify themselves for fear of harassment. And there is at least one individual who was instructed by his employer not to speak on this issue for fear that it would result in targeting the business. So I'm obviously unable to divulge the names of those people, but to say that this is disturbing and distressing is a bit of an understatement, but you should know, you should be aware of that also. The Ventura Neighbors Association comes together periodically to discuss matters of local concern. And in our last ice cream social, which took place just about 2 weeks ago and was attended by council members Rekdal and Burt, we invited people to identify the issues that were of particular concern to them. Without any prompting, and I have to emphasize that, the greatest number of issues raised had to do with the parking of oversized vehicles in the neighborhood, particularly on a long-term basis. And at this point, I really need to emphasize very strongly, if it were a question of 3 or 4 trailers temporarily parked, we would not be here. But this is a large and it's a growing problem, and it's been going on for about a decade. I think I'll skip a little bit. Many of those comments have been translated into emails that have been sent to you, and I hope you have a chance to read them. So this is an issue that has vexed us literally for years and has been brought to the attention of City Council members, and both on an individual and a collective basis. I've been speaking to council members for 8 or 10 years about this, and I know that many of my fellow residents have also. It's a situation that is bad and is getting worse. The closure of parking along El Camino has had the unintended, but I think entirely predictable effect of moving a lot of those vehicles into the residential streets. And that's exactly what seems to be happening. Now, we understand perfectly well that this is an extremely complex social issue, and we are not pretending that we know how to solve it. But what we do think is that it is completely unreasonable to ask one neighborhood, and in particularly probably the most vulnerable neighborhood in the city, to take responsibility for solving it. Okay, so next up, it is sometimes argued, it's frequently argued actually, that what's the big deal? They're not hurting anybody. They're not bothering anybody. Why don't we just leave it alone, leave them alone? And what I have to say about that is that the Ventura neighbors would respectfully disagree. So I have brought one visual aid, if I may. Am I allowed to do this? This is a map of our neighborhood, which in our last ice cream social, we asked people to put little colored dots where they live. But then I added the blue masking tape, which is the areas where we now have long-term oversized vehicle parking. And it's a lot. And everybody else, okay? I don't think there's another neighborhood in Palo Alto that looks anything like this. And I'm talking about the blue masking tape. So there's that. As far as they're not bothering anybody, well, as I say, I think the neighbors would respectfully disagree. And at this point, I'd like to ask, can you bring up my first slide? Second slide, actually. So there are 4 issues that I think belie that claim. First and most obvious one is public safety. Pedestrians and cyclists are endangered by large campers, unhitched trailers and vans. My neighbors have noted that they obstruct sidewalks, as you can see. They occupy multiple parking spaces. They obscure visibility from side streets. There is the bottom center of those pictures is an alleyway off of Fernando. And if you can imagine turning left off of El Camino and having somebody come out of that alleyway with this monster vehicle there, it's simply a hazard. I don't know what else to say about it. And, you know, there's no amount of sympathy that can change the fact that it is a physical hazard to all kinds of people. The Park Boulevard is a bicycle boulevard. It is the access route to 4 schools, from elementary through middle school to high schools to Stanford University.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Sorry?
Your time is up, sir.
My time is up. Oh dear. Can you give me another minute or two?
Sorry, I can't, but if you even want to resend those at the top of their inbox, any particular email, that's fine.
Okay, well, I'm so sorry about that, but I will be submitting these comments to you in writing. And I have also, if I could ask the I'm sorry I lost track of time. There's obviously a lot more to say, and I hope that my neighbors will say most of it.
Great. Well, I will look forward to that, and we will take a look at what gets passed around. Thank you for your public comment.
Our next speaker is Catherine T., followed by Bruce.
I'm one of the owners of 3225 El Camino Real at the corner of El Camino and Portage. Portage is one of the 14 streets impacted by the clusters of oversized vehicles. The property was purchased 25 years ago with the intent to build a mixed-use project, and to date we've invested $35 million with the reliance that it was zoned service commercial, which is described in the Municipal Code, Chapter 18.16.010D, as, quote, intended to create and maintain areas accommodating citywide and regional services that may be inappropriate in neighborhood or pedestrian-oriented shopping areas and which generally require automotive access for customer convenience. This is, unquote, this is a use that under present circumstances is curtailed. Safe parking, however, is permitted subject to regulation 18.42.160, in which a permit approved by the director is required. To my knowledge, none of the OSVs have permits. Large vehicle parking is addressed in Chapter 10.47 of the Muni Code and states that the city manager may, in their sole discretion, designate a street or portion thereof as no large vehicle parking zone when such manager determines that a safety hazard, nuisance, or activity incompatible with the zoning district is created. In my estimation, all three of these criteria have been met on Portage. Since 2019, California has spent $24 billion on homelessness. These are my tax dollars, but that figure does not take into consideration loss to businesses and private enterprise. I stand to lose conservatively $2 million on the sale of the condos. My construction time has been extended at least 15 to 20%, having to work around and accommodate the oversized vehicles. It's an aberrant use. My business cannot endure a phased approach over many years. The other owners on the first block of Portage and Nathan and I met with Nathan Baird, and we think that our request of restricted 2-hour parking is appropriate. Palo Alto needs housing. We've provided 8 units. Other builders that are seeing our experience are very discouraged. Can I have the slide? This is, when I reported this vehicle to Sergeant Kratt, he said he went and didn't see any red zone violations, but he did notice, however, that the red curb at Portage and Ash is barely visible. He said he will let Public Works know so they can hopefully
Thank you. Your time is up.
get it repainted.
Our next speaker is Bruce, followed by Hugh.
Thank you, Council. I live on Park Boulevard that has been turned into the RV's Park Boulevard. Nightly, I walk from Caltrain Station on Cal Ave to my home past the RVs and their parasitic nuisance. Dead rats, mosquitoes, foul-smelling urine, feces, noxious odors emanating from the vehicles, and non-movable storage units jacked up without wheels or engines, discarded diapers, beer bottles, propane tanks, garbage bags stashed under or hanging off the RVs, garbage strewn behind light poles and transformers. Palo Alto would not permit this nuisance in downtown or other areas, and has relegated to our neighborhood. For years, I've seen the Monday morning tow notices posted on the RVs and seen them discarded as trash on the street of Park Boulevard, since the RV owners or renters could care less about the fine for overstaying a 72-hour parking limit. I've seen the same individual move at night between multiple RVs on Sheridan Avenue, proving that there are fewer people using the RVs than the number of RVs. I would be in favor of recommendations like addressing homelessness head-on rather than allowing the homeless adults and their young children to decay in dilapidated RVs, viewing the RVs and non-operable storage units as urban blight that attracts rats, flies, mosquitoes, and other public health hazards, identifying RVs registered to landlords and confiscating or banning the RVs they use to profit from and prey on the homeless, removing and destroying unlicensed vehicles as illegally parked. Consider the unfair burden that for years my neighborhood has borne to put up with these RVs while other neighborhoods in Palo Alto enjoy tree-lined streets without RVs and their parasitic nature.
Thank you. Your time is up. Our next speaker is Hugh L., followed by Christian H.
Hi, I can mention quickly that I do agree with Barry and the previous speaker, particularly with respect to the safety issues on Park Boulevard. It's really terrible. We have the bike boulevard there, and lots of people are forced to ride out in the street. It's a big safety issue, and as well as some of the other places. So I'm old enough to recall when the Dodge motorhome started to come out, and we were all amazed as children. We saw these things, and the open road and travel and so on seemed very romantic. Now we see the end result of that. It was a societal mistake. These things have become urban blight, and Barry really didn't get to finish on the sanitation issue as the previous speaker did, but it's really awful along Park. You want to walk from our house down to California Avenue, and sometimes the stench is really bad. At times, Matadero is just an open sewer, basically, when people have been dumping a lot into the storm drains. So it is a big problem. And in terms of solutions, I understand that there are a lot of legal issues that people are working with. What I would like to see is some of the housing that we're building get earmarked for people who are currently either unhoused or vehicularly housed. The report kind of switches between them at times. Earmark it for them and get them moved into that housing if they choose to, and otherwise the vehicle should be moved. And I don't see why we can't take that as part of the phased approach where ultimately we ban these vehicles from the city. They're just not, they don't serve the urban housing need. They don't belong here.
Thank you. Your time is up.
I also would like to see option J considered as part of the phasing at the end.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christian H., followed by Roland T.
Good evening, council members. I agree with staff to increase the regulation on these RVs. I'm a local property manager. We manage about 20 to 30 commercial properties here in Palo Alto. I represent a lot of owners and a lot of tenants. And, to agree with the first speaker, I think the thing and several others is that safety is the first thing that has come to mind for a lot of our tenants. I mean, obviously there's many reasons that have been discussed, but what I really want to focus on is my tenants out on Embarcadero Road by the golf course and by the airport. When you're trying to enter or exit those buildings, it's a safety concern now. And what this phased approach, I think, needs to consider is immediate safety concerns now need to be addressed. Oversized vehicles on that road and other roads in particular are extremely dangerous. I've personally seen a line of 8 kids riding out to the Baylands on the sidewalk there. And because people can't see when they're turning into these entrances, it's really dangerous. When you're leaving the parking lots, you can't see an oncoming car until your nose of your car is already in the oncoming traffic. So, while there are many things to consider here, what I really hope that you will consider is taking care of the safety issues now, because someone will get hurt, and it's a huge issue. Lastly, I would urge council to do this citywide. You can't create losers and winners with these neighborhoods. There are some neighborhoods that are not represented tonight. If you just pick whether it's commercial, you think the commercial tenants won't be affected, I promise you they will. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Roland T., followed by Raymond G.
Hi, I'm an engineer at a satellite company, and yeah, we have a group of engineers who has been living in RVs for almost a decade now. And we've managed to keep our street clean until about last year or so, when a bunch of people who showed up who basically don't care about anything. Basically, these tow notices are what has been keeping our community clean. I care about this tow notice, but the people who are leaving piles of trash and dumping sewage into the street don't care about that because their plates are expired and they're not even registered in their name. So the tickets mean nothing. You actually have to tow the vehicle. I actually talked to the parking enforcement officer and asked him when the vehicle behind me with 5 of these things on it was going to get towed because it was actively leaking sewage, and he said he didn't know. When the law states that you can legally tow it at that point. And I think that just going around the circle where I live, about half of these RVs are not registered. And if you would actually enforce the tow warnings, this would not be as big of a problem as it is today. And yeah, there are good people in our community. The janitors who clean up my factory work there, and they're currently raising their family in an RV, which I don't think they would be able to do in this area if they weren't able to have a safe place like that. I've been able to go completely solar electric, and I used to be able to take my house to the beach on weekends before all the parking spaces got taken up. But yeah, you have to enforce the law if this is going to get better, and you don't even have to make any changes because—
Thank you. Your time is up.
Yes. People.
Our next speaker is Raymond G., followed by Dave M.
Oh. There we go. So good evening. My name is Raymond Goins. On behalf of Alpha Uprise, the Black Democrats, we are the Santa Clara Democratic Party that denouncing, demonizing, and unhoused population. I'm not going to read this, pick my heart. So look, I've been to a lot of city council meetings as far as the impact of Prop 36 and arresting the unhoused, right? Palo Alto is senior, and the wealthy residents are senior complaining about people that are unhoused. I heard a woman say she invested $35 million into her company, but I didn't think twice about asking a person that's unhoused in front of her business, how can she help him? Right? I heard about solutions about how you guys did everything to help the RVs and how to place them, but I didn't hear not one thing about how you're gonna offer these people employment so they can afford the housing to live in Palo Alto. The Ventura Housing Association, he sees a 4th generation Palo Alto. That's generational wealth. He said for the new arrivals. He's forgetting about everybody else that comes from poverty and doesn't come from the same situations he comes from. They say that you consider a citywide ban on RVs. But then I question, is that citywide ban including to cap the parts of Stanford that is in Palo Alto? Are you going to ban those students from using no RVs? Or just a war on people that are not wealthy and elite? Palo Alto has a history in Santa Clara County of just gentrification. There's a reason why there is no African-American members here. There's probably only 2 of us in this whole crowd. That's probably the population that you're trying to criminalize and continue to incarcerate. Incarcerating somebody because they're poverty-stricken is not the answer. It's never been the answer. Let's try employment opportunities. Treat them as if they're equal. Not because somebody has a lesser education than you, but it's equal because they have a better lived experience than you do. To address homelessness, you have to offer employment opportunities. Because affordable housing ain't affordable if they can't afford to live in there. The housing can be $500 a month. If I ain't got a job to pay for that $500, it ain't affordable.
Your time is up.
And I'm a member, I live in the Opportunity Center, so I am formerly unhoused.
Our next speaker is Dave M., followed by Jeremy E.
Hi, I represent a company called Recor Medical. We are a success story. We are the first to market with a device to lower blood pressure. There's not been anything like that before. We have gone from about 150 employees to about 350, and we're really proud to be in Palo Alto. That situation is becoming untenable, mostly because we have so many RVs that are in front of our location that it's difficult to hire and it's difficult to bring in customers. It also represents a real safety issue for us. There is sewage in the street. There has been what we suspect to be drug dealing in front of our operations. The police have been very helpful, and we are in almost daily contact with them, but we are not seeing any effectual action taken against these RVs. Some of those RVs have been there on that same street in Elwell Court for over a year now. There are, as of this morning, 15 in the space of one block, and that represents about 70% of the street parking in that area. So it has been very, very challenging for us to deal with these neighbors. We certainly do treat them with respect and with dignity, but we are seeing that the city is not taking any action to enforce the law as it stands. And that is a challenge for us. And it may mean that we are not able to stay in Palo Alto. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jeremy E., followed by Jeanette B.
Hello. First, I'd like to say thanks for putting Officer Bulatao, I think that's how you pronounce his name. It's his new job to kind of police the thing we're all here for. Much like you mentioned earlier about adjoining communities having lawsuits, I would also like to say that we also have adjoining communities who have recalled their council members. Excuse me. So I would like to say A through J, A through Z, whatever the list is, we ask that you do it with a lot of effort and not at the pace of what you think may be appropriate, but a little quicker. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Jeanette B., followed by Larry G.
Hi, my name is Jeanette Baldwin. I'm representing Anderson Honda on Embarcadero Way. It has been an untenable situation with the RVs. Just Saturday's count, there was 14 RVs on Embarcadero Way, 15 on Embarcadero Road, and 16 on Faber. The waste, the safety, our employees are being harassed, cars are being damaged, properties being damaged. You can't pull in and out of the driveways. And Faber Place, excuse me, is direct access to the Baylands. Used to be a beautiful place to take a walk at lunchtime. Now you can't get down the street or the sidewalks. There's just so much garbage. There's so much waste. I see children in their bicycles in the middle of the street because they can't go along the curbs. Someone's going to get hurt, and it's going to be a tragedy. I understand that there's a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration, but safety and health are first and need to be addressed first. The waste, I just can't tell you how bad it is. I've called the police, I've called the community services. It's just not being taken care of. And there's laws about it. And the laws, you know, like the guy said, the 72-hour parking, and they just throw them in the street. They don't care. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people that are respectful of the law and take everything seriously, but there's so many more that do not. And it's just impacting everything around it.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is
Thank you, committee members. Homelessness is a very serious issue, I think, to many people in Palo Alto. I've lived in the Ventura neighborhood and raised a family for 21 years. And if you look across some of many of the comments, certain communities are disproportionately affected by this issue. And one of the things you see in terms of, I think, some of the themes you hear through all the many speakers about the incredible safety concerns. And if any of you have walked around Matadero Creek on Park, it's full of sewage and trash. My daughter won't walk down Park Avenue by herself at night. So the change in the last few years and the number has created not only physical safety, as we talked about, environmental safety, and you asked us to come with solutions. I think one that's the theme that's been pretty clear is obviously there's gonna be a long-term solution that takes some time, but to enforce the law now. These vans, they have piles of stickers, no one's towing them, right? No one can park. And I think the impact to the business and the communities have been well known. So you ask us as a community what we can do. I think if you help enforce the laws and help find a solution for a safe place for these people to go, not in front of people's doorsteps. So thank you for your service.
Our next speaker is Ken J, followed by Reese H.
I want to echo what the Vice Mayor said at the onset. The staff report is quite comprehensive, and I appreciate all the work that went into that. I also want to acknowledge something that Ms. McDonough said about preventing exploitation of our most vulnerable neighbors. These are people who live in our community. I have a couple of thoughts. I should say I live on Park Boulevard and I patronize businesses on California Avenue, so I'm familiar with the issues along that street. I want to talk about a couple of things in the staff report. In the recommended phase approach in phase 1, there's mention of detached vehicles or trailers. I hope that if you draft an ordinance that you will address things like general contractors who store materials or equipment in front of a building site. That seems to be an appropriate thing. I hope any ordinance would allow that storage of a trailer. And in phase 2, where you talk about certain streets, I think that Coyote Hill Road and Deer Creek Road are not adjacent to residences or schools, and portions of those roadways are not adjacent to any business. Admittedly, those are probably unattractive places to live, but I hope that you will consider adding those to the list of streets that you would consider designating for vehicles. Lastly, I just want to say I thoroughly embrace the idea of weekly street cleaning. You know, if our neighbors are living on the street, we should help take care of them. We should take care of ourselves, take care of them. We're in this together. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Reese H, followed by Justin H.
I'm ready when you are. Howdy, folks. Just want to thank you guys for your time today. I know I've spoken with a couple of y'all in here, out of here, around here. Y'all know how it goes with these kind of things. The number one thing I want to talk about is the safety. As the engineers mentioned, we do have a bunch of folks around here who are professional. We do live out of our RVs, but these, for less of a better word for it, the troublemakers out there, they are dropping septic everywhere. It is bringing bugs everywhere. And we are getting daily harassment from the city for things that I can see how it is an issue. If there is trash outside of an RV, let's pick it up. If there is a leaky valve, let's fix it. If they ain't gonna fix it, let's take that rig. I'm a 3rd generation hippie. I'm a 3rd generation gypsy. I've seen everything you could imagine, from a McDonald's place mounted to a flatbed to multi-million-dollar homes on wheels out there. And the one thing that's similar amongst all of them is the care in it. And if we ain't caring for our rigs, punish us for it. But if we are, let us be. That's all we ask. I used to work with every business owner we came across to help them out. We got greeted with everything from firearms to fish to fecal matter. And I get where the sewage can be an issue. But if it's bad on the street, imagine having somebody throw it at you trying to walk out of your home, go to work. Imagine getting assaulted by a sardine or a salmon. Imagine having an officer of the law stand there while a business owner tells you you deserve a bullet in the head and not doing anything. So if we want to talk about safety and concerns, I'm down for it. Hell, I'll wait outside the meeting. I'll be happy to talk with anybody about anything. At the same time, that street goes both ways. So we're happy to help, just so long as we're happy to be heard. Thank you, guys.
Our next speaker is Justin H, followed by Patty.
Good evening. Good evening. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I know these issues bring strong feelings, and I respect that. I'm here to share a perspective that y'all might not often hear. We are your neighbors. Some of us are parents, seniors. We work in this town. Some of us were raised in this town. Living in these RVs and in these cars It's not a choice. It's not a lifestyle that we chose. A lot of us are here due to unforeseen circumstance. We're here because we're just trying to survive. We are alienated and humiliated for the way that we live. Some of us ended up here due to neglect and abuse. And some of us made some mistakes that led us here. But for the majority of us, this was never a choice. It was a last resort. All we want to do is live with dignity and belong in the community many of us grew up in. Sorry. We don't want to be treated as outcasts. We do also want solutions. Some of these places I wouldn't be able to get to work from because I can't drive due to a disability. Gang Road is a great place. I would have to quit my job to go there. I have a decent job. I'm an engineer. But I'd have to quit that job and I would struggle to find another.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Patty, followed by Elisa A.
I'm Patty Irish. This problem is because we do not have enough affordable housing for the many unhoused. So I'm going to suggest something that's a little bit different. I suggest that we find land suitable to build small houses. Sometimes they might be prefab that can be clustered and made permanent with support services available to house people that now live in mobile units. This is more of a permanent solution and has the dignity of sewage, heat, and cool, and a livable space of varying sizes. There'll be a problem even more than we have now when we have our new transitional housing and they can only be there for 6 months and then they have to find permanent housing. So I recommend that we honor the humanity of course, of the people, and we just heard a very powerful statement of that, and that we try to find something that would be more permanent. And there are places in the country that have used these prefabs, and that we would cluster them and they would be have air conditioning, have heat, and have sewage and everything, and be considered permanent. It would, just be another alternative. But I think we really need, it takes so long for us to build a sustainable amount of affordable housing. And so this might be just one of the avenues that would try to serve this populations like this. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elisa A, followed by Maya H.
Hello. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening, and thank you for the work you do for Palo Alto. My name's Alyssa, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Foster Museum, which is located on Commercial Street, which is near the intersection of San Antonio Road and East Charleston Road. The Foster Museum is a community resource that presents the watercolor wilderness journeys of British artist Tony Foster. The museum is free to visit and also offers free tours, family programming, and art making opportunities. The museum strives to be a helpful community resource. The museum is experiencing significant and ongoing operational challenges as the result of oversized vehicles parking for extended periods of time in front of the museum and neighboring businesses. These impacts include museum visitors have difficulty finding the building and parking nearby because sightlines are obscured to the building itself by oversized vehicles. Museum visitors, particularly children, seniors, and people with disabilities, have difficulty accessing the museum because they are forced to park much further away when the curbside parking spots and many of the street spots in general are blocked by oversized vehicles. Representatives of organizations who are interested in renting the museum facility for events have expressed reservations about rentals due to street conditions. This disrupts one of the museum's mechanisms for generating revenue. The sightlines for drivers exiting the museum's driveway are frequently blocked, and drivers are not able to see oncoming traffic in order to turn into the street safely when they leave the museum lot. Museum staff have observed and in some cases have personally experienced many near misses. Street conditions are frequently unsafe because of generators, electrical wiring, propane tanks, equipment, trash cans, biological waste, and other items being stored or used or disposed of in public areas. And the neighborhood's postal carrier has reported difficulty delivering mail. These problems have been ongoing, and the museum absolutely recognizes the complexity of the issue and thanks you for your efforts to find and address these problems. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Maya H., followed by David A.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. Thank you for your time. I'm Maya Harris with J. Paul Company. We are the property owner at 2747 Park Boulevard in the Ventura neighborhood. Our 36,000 square foot office building is currently fully leased by a single tenant. We are formally requesting the implementation of time-restricted parking, preferably 2-hour parking, or other reasonable parking restrictions on Sheridan Avenue between Park Boulevard and Page Mill Road. This section of Sheridan is currently the only street in the immediate vicinity without any parking restrictions. This block has increasingly been used to store oversized vehicles, including RVs and vans, that have remained parked in the same locations for months at a time. Of the 7 vehicles that permanently park on Sheridan, 5 are owned by a single individual who we believe is engaging in van lording. So our request is twofold. In the immediate term, we do support increased cleaning and more frequent street sweeping to maintain basic conditions. Longer term, we support an ordinance prohibiting van lording and increasing safe RV parking sites. We also recommend including Sheridan Avenue in the downtown residential preferential parking program within the California Avenue Business District, located just 1 block away. We do want to acknowledge the city's action earlier this year when no overnight parking signage was installed along the 100 block of Page Mill Road adjacent to the property in May of this year. That significantly reduced similar problems on that block. We believe Sheridan Avenue is a strong candidate for the same type of interventions. Thank you.
Our next speaker is David A., followed by Rosalie H.
Honourable members of the committee, I've read through Mr. Shikada's report and I have some comments. Page 5, quote, "Note, as a practical matter to date, it is not common that OSVs attempt to park in residential zones." Untrue, as you've heard from many people in the Ventura neighborhood. Page 5, he talks about the 72-hour rule and the half-mile rule. I have a reply from Ken Kratt, who's the traffic sergeant in charge of the community service office on that subject. Quote, "It is very rare to be able to read an odometer in vehicles, but especially RVs. We used to be able to tow vehicles once they have 5 parking citations, but the 9th Circuit Court ruled that unconstitutional. Now all that occurs is the citations pile up and just don't get paid." So in essence, the efficacy of Ordinance 4558 is not worth the paper it's written on with respect to RVs. Page 9, he talks about putting fabric over the storm drains. So we're talking human excrement here, the dumping of which on public streets was illegal last time I looked. But Mr. Shikada is proposing to accommodate it. Why should RV owners get special treatment? Page 15H, limit oversized vehicle parking to certain streets with focus regulations. So instead of solving the issue, Mr. Shikada is proposing to consolidate it and blight several neighborhoods in the process. No small area of the city should have to bear the burden of a citywide issue. So this proposal needs to be made dead on arrival. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Our next speaker is Rosalie H., followed by Scott O. Rosalie H. Moving on to Scott O.
Hi, thank you. I serve on the boards of PAF and my HOA near East Meadow Circle. Speaking for myself tonight, I agree with Reese, Justin, and Patty. I visited most of the RVs on East Meadow Circle and Fabian this weekend. The people I met are kind. They clearly form a community with interpersonal ties. I met more young people living independently in Palo Alto that afternoon than I did in years of voter canvassing, also more minorities. Many options in the staff report are good. I'll say I don't like vanlording because it is renting city-owned land, but consider also that shutting down vanlords will lock doors to their tenants, doors those tenants need. Where will those people go? Staff report says, quote, staff would determine what resources can be offered, i.e., they don't know. You've heard from some of these folks that they don't have better options. Some of those people will surely be on the street if their doors are locked by the city. Banning unmovable vehicles has the same problem, and a lot of the vehicles I saw were detached trailers. We must ask ourselves which we dislike more, vanlords or unsheltered street homelessness. I know my answer. The way I'd like the city to go to war with vanlords entails options I don't see clearly in the staff report. My own phased approach would be to start by charging a reasonable lot rent to vanlords and doing an annual photo survey. Whenever a vanlord is discovered, you could charge rent back to when they moved in. Meanwhile, do everything possible to flood the housing market with a particularized effort to get SRO dorm-style units, not just legalized, but actually built. And finally, when the vacancies are there, yes, some vacancies is possible, start banning the practice, not before. Until then, one person I met Saturday said 53 people are living on East Meadow Circle right now. That seems credible. Together with Fabian and Bayshore, I'm sure the capacity exceeds the new Life Moves project in the Baylands. No one had to pay a dime for that. And while I agree with our Ventura friends that we need to keep the bike lanes clear, in my area, that parking wasn't helping. And with all due respect to the local businesses who've spoken, I don't think that parking was helping anyone as much then as it is now. Thank you. I think you're all kind people, and I've never envied one of your decisions less. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Becky S., followed by Aram J.
Am I up? Okay. Good evening. Thank you, everybody. My name is Becky Saunders from Ventura. I do have a proposed solution. Listen, while you search for solutions, could we rotate hosting RV dwellers throughout the city so that all neighborhoods could share equally in the caring of our unhoused friends? How about a yes in my backyard movement for RV dwellers? I think it's a great idea. A lot of people don't like it, but it could help. And now here's my story. 3 gentlemen, occupy an RV next to my home. They've been there for about 2 years. I know their names. We don't hassle them. We know them and understand their circumstances, which are sad. My husband, Scott, and I have occasionally hosed vomit and strange liquids out of our bushes. We've picked up a good deal of garbage and broken glass, dealt with human excrement, tossed over our fence into our yard where our granddaughters have played. Barry said earlier, the RV parking emerged as a #1 concern at our ice cream social. Venturans talked to council members Keith and Pat about our concerns. So it was jaw-dropping and mind-boggling that 2 weeks later, the city offers us the option to make permanent the parking clusters in areas of the town where they already exist, including Ventura. That's it? That's all we get? The lesson is you talk to a couple of council members and 2 weeks later, you get the super shaft. I was just shocked when I read the sections of the report that had to deal with, can't beat them, let's join them and clean it up. Thank you. Since its reboot over 10 years ago, the Ventura Neighborhood Association has had one official policy, and that is parity with other neighborhoods. The promises and amenities and protections that other neighborhoods enjoy never quite trickle down to Ventura. So tired of this, I'm here asking once again for parity for all Venturans, for all Palo Altans. We want merciful and humane solutions that isn't built on turning Ventura streets and other streets and other neighborhoods into de facto garbage dumps and RV junkyards. Okay, all right, who's with me on parity? And let's move everybody around the neighborhoods. All the neighborhoods participate.
Our next speaker is Aram J, followed by Anjuman.
Yeah, I raised my two sons as a single dad for lots and lots of years in the Ventura neighborhood, extraordinary neighborhood. So I wrote a letter to you all yesterday because there was a front page, 2-page layout in the San Jose Mercury News yesterday. Gilroy, with a population of 60,000 per capita in the Bay Area, leads with 1,048 unhoused people. Palo Alto, with a little greater population, has 206. Now, I want you to think about this. This is what I sent to Keith Reckdahl yesterday. Please compare the unhoused issues in wealthy Palo Alto with those in our less affluent neighbors like Gilroy. Remember what Justice Stanley Mosk said in his dissent. He was on the Supreme Court in California for 37 years. Progressive man, quote, from the case of Tooby versus the city of Santa Ana in 1995. The city cannot solve its homeless problems simply by exiling a large number of its homeless citizens to neighboring localities. So we have to think globally, we have to think regionally. In addition, as a retired public defender, but a member of the state bar for 47 years now, there's many defenses. And anybody that wants to talk to me about this, 415-370-5056. In Ray Eckhorn authorizes the application of the defense of necessity to unhoused cases. Before you start demonizing RV dwellers in Palo Alto and trying to push them out, this was to Keith Reckdahl, consider the chaos you will create for our already strained neighboring communities. We've got to think about what we're going to do if we try to demonize and push folks out. Thank you for that. I'll talk to you soon.
Our next speaker is Anjuman J, followed by Williams.
Our community serves roughly 200 families, which includes elderly people as well as children who use the facility on a regular basis. We are deeply concerned about the presence of long-term recreational vehicles and oversized vehicles parked all along our property lines. These vehicles have remained stationary for months and in some cases over a year, despite cities 72-hour parking ordinance. As Barry and others mentioned in here, sitting outside on the sidewalk, some of the folks smoke, drink, and play loud music, which disturbs the congregation, as well as the priest who lives in the nearby area, whose house has no privacy because of these vehicles. The outdoor water faucets and electrical outlets have been used, which cause direct cost on us. Some people place grills, furniture, and personal items on the sidewalk, which is creating tripping hazards for our community members to walk through. There are improper water disposals and other things that are used for dumpsters and leaving debris on the street. Our situation is really concerning because we have a lot of elderly members in our community as well as children who use the facility. We have tried to talk with a lot of these RV owners, which we have seen even van loading here as well, where people communicate and bring more people in. The conversations with them have gotten really aggressive, where they threaten us just to go to police and do whatever we can, and we are afraid these will lead to aggression and violence in the future against us. So while we understand that this is a humane issue and we know it's a complex issue, but we highly counsel here to every one of you guys to take a speedy decision on this. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Williams, followed by Lopez. Williams, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I want to highlight that the parking situation is not just about They've been spitting on the OSV drivers. They've been looking down at them. They've been spitting at OSV drivers. It's they are the problem. Barry Kay, all of these, they are the problem. They've been spitting at them. They've been trying to give them death threats. It's them.
Our next speaker is Lopez, followed by Matt B.
It's them. They've been spitting at the drivers. They've been giving them racist remarks, which is not what we should tolerate as people of America. So please take this into account when deciding.
Our next speaker is Matt B, followed by Jason B.
Hi, distinguished council members. Thank you for your time tonight. I sent a letter earlier today outlining many of the points that my fellow neighbors have already made here tonight. And I just want to say, in summary, the current option on the table does nothing to help the unhoused. They need housing, period. Do not enable the current unhealthy situation and do not make the residents of the Ventura neighborhood or the other neighborhoods we heard from tonight continue to deal with this matter alone. Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Jason B, followed by Ashok. It looks like Jason is no longer on Zoom, so we will move on to Ashok.
Yes, I appreciate the chance to speak to this August body. And most of the things that I wanted to cover have already been addressed here. In fact, I'm surprised to see that its situation is a lot more serious than I ever imagined. So I hope that the city will take action quickly to solve this problem.
Our next speaker is TV, followed by MBAC C.
Sí, buenas tardes. ¿Hay alguien que me pueda traducir? I have somebody for translate.
No, they need to tell us that.
We're checking to see if there's a translator available. Is it sick? What was the language? Spanish. We have a Spanish translator? Didn't we have a tool for that?
Yeah, no speak English, only speak Spanish.
I believe the translation was a pilot program, and I'm not sure if it's still going on.
Okay, well, I would invite you to go ahead and speak in Spanish. There are quite a number who understand it, and unless staff has a different suggestion or idea. Clerk or council? We'll go with that. Okay, yeah, so we'll start your clock over now, and I would invite you to go ahead if you're comfortable. In Spanish is fine.
Yeah, please. Okay, si hay alguien que me pueda traducir. Hello.
Hello.
¿Hay
Yes.
alguien que pueda traducir?
Yes, we know, and we don't have a translator on staff right now. If somebody wants to volunteer to help.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I tell you what, we have somebody in chambers who can translate. So what I would ask you to do is every sentence or so to.
Yo te puedo traducir, solo habla despacio para traducirte.
Yeah, and we will extend your time accordingly. So please go ahead.
Ya puedes hablar.
Sí, yo soy una de las personas que viven en la mobile home.
He's one of the person who lives in the mobile homes.
Sí, yo quería pues que pedirle pues lo que es pues, que los puedan pues apoyar, ¿me entiendes? Porque no es fácil para nosotros vivir en esta situación, pero es por el alto costo de vivienda que hay, pues.
Espera un momento para traducir. He
Okay.
says he would like to get support because it's not easy for them to live in the situation they are currently on. Continúa.
Sí, pues que pues ya ve que las rentas están bien altas, pues, y para nosotros es difícil vivir así, pero pues no tenemos otra opción porque no podemos pagar una renta, porque la renta está bien alta, pues, y trabajo, pues no.
As you know, the rent is very expensive right now. We're not able to afford these type of rates to pay the rent. So we need support in be able to have able to get our rent, paid our rent.
Con un trabajo mínimo no se alcanza a pagar una renta, pues.
With a minimum wage, we're not able to pay our rent.
Sí, entonces pues quería pues que los apoyaran pues en ese sentido. Pues yo entiendo a las personas que están en contra de esto, pero pues para nosotros no es fácil vivir en esta situación.
They understand that sometimes it comes with a difficulty for the neighbors when they're parking the streets, but it is a situation where they're not able to afford rent and they need to have pay rate that is able to pay the rent. So they need support with that.
La cuestión que si, ¿me entiendes? Si lo sacan de acá, ¿me entiendes? O sea, en vez de ayudarlo, lo van a afectar más, pues, porque ¿dónde vamos a parar? ¿Me entiendes?
If they get displaced from this place, they will continue in poverty and they will not be able to sustain their families.
Ese es el gran problema que tenemos nosotros, pues no es que los guste vivir así, pues es el sistema que no se adapta pues para los salarios a la renta que hay, pues.
The system is displacing them for their homes. So now if they displace them for this town, they will continue living in poverty.
Sí, sería todo. Gracias, muy amable.
That will be all. Thank you.
Y espero su comprensión.
Thank you, sir, for translating.
And if I may clarify about our translation services, we do have translation services, but we need about a day ahead of time so we can set up the technology properly.
Okay, thank you. And I assume those instructions are on our website in Spanish and other languages as well.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Mbach, followed by Geneva. Mbach C, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, hello. My name is Saliu. I participated in Carrot School project programs, and I want to share with the city council, the business owners, and everyone that RV dwellers are human. Some of us tonight are speaking from lived experience and have spent time with RV dwelling families throughout the different KSP programs. So as a community, we should be thinking about human and dignified ways to include RV dwellers in our community and not ostracize them. As you looked at drive by or pass an RV, I want you to think about a dad trying to make ends to meet his family, a mother who has no kitchen to cook for her family, a toddler who do not have proper bathroom in the place he calls home. So let's work together to find solutions. Wouldn't that be innovative? Isn't innovation what we want to be known for? Thank you.
Our next speaker is Geneva K, followed by Azalea. Geneva, you should be able to unmute yourself. All right. Moving on to Azalea. It looks like they are no longer in the Zoom. And so our final speaker will be Exargiello.
Hi, my name is Exargiello. I'm a tenant on Embarcadero Road. Delphi Diagnostics representing them and ourselves too. So I get that there's issues on both sides. I mean, for me, from being a tenant, when we have board members, potential partnership, it always becomes an issue. It becomes the point of the focus of the conversation, which is not ideal. But I do understand on the other side that there's people that are less fortunate. I do agree there has to be a balance on how to fix this issue. I don't have the solution for that because there's so many families involved. But I can't speak on, the behalf of our company that it is really hard to take walks because there's a lot of unknowns. A lot of employees feel unsafe. We actually have employees that don't want to come into work because they fear for their safety for whatever reasons, and those could be personal reasons. But we constantly have to deal with that. So, I know that the council has got a tough position. They're in a tough position, and any guidance that you guys can provide us to, just make it a safe environment. I do feel like at times we're like a few seconds from an accident happening, just because the limited viewpoints that we have when we're exiting or entering the facility. So, let's not wait until an accident happens and try to take care of and address this issue. Thank you.
That concludes public comment on item number 1.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you to all the public speakers. It's a serious topic, and I know it requires bravery to stand up here and talk on just about any issue, but certainly on this one, because it's very, very personal to all of you in a variety of ways. So we appreciate you taking the time to be here tonight. I want to ask just a couple of clarifying things for staff. What I would suggest is that we sort of take a round and ask questions and make some general observations and comments. And when that kind of wears itself out, that we can move on to the staff recommendation and kind of work through our responses to that. Does that sound all right? Okay. So one of the things I wanted to ask is that I had a couple of things I'd noted in the staff report and were brought up by speakers, and I just want to clarify. One is that there was a comment made, I think it was Ken J, about detached vehicles, and was commenting on, general contractors, and that it would seem that there could be some appropriate uses. I think there's a whole permitting process and that they can get permits for having things like that in typical public parking spots. Is that correct?
Why don't I lead off and staff can elaborate or redirect as may be necessary. I think that's a good example of the kinds of specific area that we would need to follow up on. And for example, if there were, to your point, I think a construction permit related need for vehicles on the street, then it could be addressed through that process. But otherwise, any issue or any type of ongoing permitting, say for the company, would need to be looked at. I think that would add some complexities that may require further discussion.
Thank you. Another thing I wanted to ask about is that I believe I saw it in the staff report, and that is, the reason we're primarily talking about industrial and commercial areas is that in residential areas, I believe there's a current code that disallows parking between, I believe it's the hours of 2 and 6 a.m. And that should apply to the Ventura neighborhood as well. Is that correct?
That is correct in terms of the code, and again, others may want to elaborate. I think it is also, there are a couple of things to consider. One is a recognition that signage is required in order to really enforce that regulation. The other is that there are areas, in particular, I think Ventura is a prime example where the boundary between a residential area and a non-residential or what might be light industrial area is often not clear.
Yeah, thank you. I think that there are both issues. So, but with respect to, so we can look at addressing both. But with respect to the part that's clearly residential, it's going to move over more to an enforcement issue. And then with that, it's going to be, instructions, signage, whatever all the things are. I just want to identify the specifics of the issue because it'll lead us to different solutions. So, okay, thank you on that. And I just want to also verify that none of we council members had any input or participation in the preparation of this report or your suggestions, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then I just want to make one observation, and then I'll move on to my colleagues, and I'll have a few more later. But what has become obvious to me before tonight, and certainly strongly tonight, is that oversized vehicle dwellers are a diverse group. They're not monolithic. And the reason I mention that is that I think the reasons they're RV dwellers are a diversity of reasons, and thus, again, our solutions need to work on perhaps some different angles. So we do have some that we've heard who have been displaced from their homes due to rising costs and perhaps unanticipated expense, medical, or a mistake, or whatever. I spoke to one vehicle dweller who had been working 3 jobs in this city. And, in our community for years, it was too much. So he quit one, and then the restaurant he was working in closed. And then the other one had layoffs. And so there he was stretching out his savings in his apartment, looking for another job, and didn't get one. So there's that kind of circumstance. Then we do have those living with mental health and substance use disorders. That's a different kind of solution we may need to work on. But then there's another that has come to my attention I was previously unaware of, which is itinerant or temporary workers in our communities who, because of the nature of their work and the level of compensation, also can't get permanent housing or afford apartments. And what I'm thinking of are people who work on a big construction project in town that may have come up. Like for a large corporate construction project, or travel nurses. We've had one at Stanford or wherever who come into our communities, or roadies at Live Nation. I met a couple of those who work here, and they're looking for second jobs and things. But in the meantime, they live in RVs because that's what they can afford, and they can't work remotely. Those are jobs where you have to show up in person. So, how do we deal with that when, as a community, if we want those services in our midst, and if people and engineers and people, we want them here, so we need to find other alternatives for them. But then, even that said, we have, some street dwellers who are also frustrated with other street dwellers who are leaving trash around or biohazards around, and they're frustrated too. That doesn't solve all of the problems that we've heard about tonight, but I do want to say there are very different people in terms of the way they behave in and around our communities. And I think, again, that leads us to different types of solutions. So, I have some ideas I'm eager to talk about, both reactions to the proposals tonight, so we can move this forward. But I'm going to stop there for the moment and give my colleagues a chance to share some preliminary thoughts. I don't know. Would you like to go first, Councilmember Stone?
Thank you, Chair. And kind of following up on that last point, the one thing I think made clear tonight, no one disagrees that people need to follow the rules, whether that's our city's wealthiest residents or our RV dwellers. The law should apply equally to all. And I've heard everyone here tonight talk about enforcement and the need to hold bad actors accountable, whether those have been RV dwellers themselves or business owners, homeowners, renters. All have agreed that we need rules for all people to be able to follow. And so, big part of I just kind of want to understand exactly what our current rules are how they're being enforced. I mean, we keep hearing a lot of allegations that rules are not being enforced. I have some significant concerns around there. So I'll kind of keep it a few kind of broader questions at first for staff, and then I'll get into more the actual recommendations. Just real quick, Chair, as far as kind of timing, should we keep ourselves to maybe 5 minutes per round? I don't want to just keep going.
Yeah, let's do that. If you're on a roll at 5, I'll, have another minute.
Okay. I think I should be able to kind of get through it thematically then in my first few. So the first, pretty general for staff. I was really surprised about how much higher at the percentage of within the point in time count. What we're about 88% of our unhoused are living in OSVs, significantly higher than the rest of the county. Are there thoughts about why that is?
Thank you, council member. There hasn't been any sort of longitudinal correlational study, but anecdotally, when I've talked with other cities in the northern part of Santa Clara County, we see more RVs up here. I think that just may have to do with our different context and the different types of communities we have.
Do we know, because we're very similar to Mountain View in a lot of ways. They have made some significant changes over the past year. Some are being litigated, but some of those we're considering ourselves. And have we been able to kind of track their numbers, kind of pre and post implementation of some of those regulations?
Thank you, council member. It'll be very interesting in a couple weeks when the county releases the 2025 point in time count, the city level data, because then we'll really be able to look at that in a more granular way. The data we used in this report is from 2023 and then supplemented from our own staff observations.
If I could add to that, I think also worth noting in Mountain View that we understand that the settlement agreement and the 3 miles roughly of streets that have been designated as allowing oversized vehicle parking was to effectively meet the demand that was observed in the city.
Yeah, I'd really like to learn more about what they've done and how it's been effective or not. So I'm interested in seeing the point in time count. But kind of related to that, I mean, one thing I was a bit curious about was why outreach hasn't been done to community stakeholders on these ideas. I mean, that would have been information that I would have found really helpful. And actually, I was kind of a bit surprised that we didn't hear from many tonight in public comment. I mean, we have so much institutional knowledge from our various stakeholders who are serving the unhoused within the community. I think that would have helped me feel a little more informed on making these decisions. And I guess this a week ago, we had a great discussion on how we can make council meetings more efficient. The Vice Mayor kind of pointed out the need to be more deferential to our committees. And what I'm worried about is we're going to make a decision tonight. It's going to be controversial, whatever that decision is. Council's going to be really interested in it. And when that outreach, assuming it happens between now and the council meeting, we will be receiving that feedback. And I feel like that's really going to kind of change. That could really have a strong impact on opinions from either the three of us or also the rest of the council members. So maybe more just kind of feedback for the future on that, unless staff has a response.
I appreciate that. I believe it is to a certain extent one of those chicken and egg issues, and we would like, and it would certainly be within the prerogative of the committee if you'd simply like to give us some initial feedback on the concepts, and that can help lead any further both outreach as well as additional work.
Okay, thanks. Fair. And then One more question then, kind of general questions, then probably for the attorney's office. I understand towing a car considered a seizure under the Fourth Amendment requires a warrant unless it falls under the community caretaking doctrine, and towing a vehicle permissible if it jeopardizes public safety. So probably the attorney's office, maybe explain what constitutes jeopardizing public safety, and does community health and safety with improper disposal of waste, does that qualify as a risk to public safety? Because to me it would, and that's been one of my great concerns about hearing stories from residents and business owners, but I don't know if legally it would rise up to that level.
So the court decisions on this talk about the vehicle itself. So blocking a fire hydrant, a driveway, being in an active lane of traffic, impeding traffic, are the kinds of things that are considered health and safety. There is a couple of other factors that some courts have considered, including the risk that the vehicle itself may be subject to vandalism, theft, or crime. And some courts, although the courts are split on this, have considered the parking illegally to be a factor that can be considered.
Okay, but improper disposal of human waste and other potentially toxic substances has not been, to your knowledge?
It's not described as an element that satisfies community caretaking in any of the cases that are currently published.
Okay. Those are my kind of more general questions. I have more specific questions for the various proposals and thoughts that I'll hold to the next round then.
Thank you. And thank you to all members of the public who spoke. I definitely agree with the chair that these are difficult conversations and weighty conversations. So starting with some questions for the staff, what actually is the current policy on towing RVs or oversized vehicles?
I think that'd be a good question to ask our police department representatives to describe our current protocol.
Good evening, Kara Apple, Lieutenant with the Police Department. I manage the traffic team and SPD team. So currently for towing vehicles, there's two laws that we can tow for. One is for an expired registration and one is for a 72-hour violation.
Okay.
So if I can add to Lieutenant Apple's brief description that there are procedural requirements for both of those that are more extensive than the brief description that she just gave you.
So has there been any shift in policy over the last year or so about prioritizing certain RVs or certain situations within those expired registration or 72-hour windows?
No shift in policy per se. I do think it's fair to acknowledge that resource availability has been an issue. And so that includes the resources both on the street with the police department, the towing, the prosecution of offenses as work through with the district attorney's office and the judges.
Okay. So I think we've gotten a couple of updates on this as a council, but can you clarify how many RVs we've towed, say, in the last few calendar years and how that might have changed?
I don't know if we've got that information available.
I don't have that offhand.
Okay, I think it's just useful to understand what we're currently doing as a baseline to actually make decisions about well, there is no like right number of RVs to tow, or there is no like specific trend that I'm looking for, but I think just having a baseline is useful context. One of the public commenters, or a couple of public commenters, noted that potential enforcement on RVs could create street homelessness problems. So I'm sure this is something that staff has discussed or thought about. Can staff comment on that?
Thank you, Councilmember. I think that it would be pure conjecture, but anecdotally, we're likely to see folks moving around. There is much more security and sense of safety in a vehicle than just outdoors, particularly for women or single parent families. And so I would imagine the rational choice would be to move elsewhere.
Yes, that was my expectation as well. I just wasn't sure if there was some best practice or study or some other understanding that we had. Councilmember Stone already addressed this question, I believe, but did we get any specific feedback from Life Moves or the Carrot School Project on any of these potential approaches? In terms of what could potentially be most harmful to RV dwellers or what could be most compelling to have sort of cooperation and uptake on?
Thank you, Councilmember. That goes back to the chicken or the egg comment that the city manager made. So creating this staff report and this selection of options was of course shaped by several years of meeting with the RV dwellers group every month, which includes representatives from those two groups. But we have not yet sort of workshopped it with them or street tested it in the same way we would do with all community stakeholders.
Totally understood. I just wasn't sure. I thought there might be some room in Councilmember Stone's question that suggested there was, or that let there be some informal feedback that just wasn't mentioned in the staff report. But I realize we have to get this conversation started, and I think it's worthy for our city council and community to weigh in, and then we continue this back and forth. So I don't take any, so I'm totally fine with how we've laid out our conversation. I have more comments on specific approaches. Should I end my round and then we?
Yeah, let's get to that next one.
Yeah, okay, I'll end my round.
All right, thank you. So just a couple of things, and then I'll start in with some more specific comments. One is, the two of the main themes we've heard tonight are safety and public health, and those are absolutely things that we need to provide as a city. So, I'm concerned about parking in bike lanes, honestly, oversized vehicles, but also SUVs, any vehicles that are blocking bike lanes. So I think there's things that we need to just think about, but I assume there would be some interplay with our bicycle and pedestrian transportation plan. I mean, is there, how does that work?
I would invite our chief transportation official to touch on that a little bit if Rhea could come forward.
Welcome.
Thank you. Rhea Hooch-Barrett-Lowe, Chief Transportation Official. So the city, staff are currently working on an update to the bicycle pedestrian transportation plan. At the moment, the focus has been on issues to do with safety and connectivity of the network for pedestrians and bicyclists. This is not an issue that has come up as part of that, but we could consider that as staff as well.
Yeah, so maybe the BPTP isn't the right place. I always get confused between that and the safe routes to school and the overall safe streets. But it seems to me that whereas there might be some, worse visibility problems and things, that generally we want to be careful about kids riding in streets and that kind of thing. And I think this might be a natural thing to have oversized vehicle considerations sort of baked in wherever is appropriate on that. Because it obviously safety is huge. But thank you.
Thank you.
And my colleagues have been exploring some of the public health impacts, and those are huge as well. And so when we get to the specifics, I want to talk about those. Before I get to that, I would like to figure out how to get the Ventura neighborhood on par with other neighborhoods. I think that, you know, the rules on the books are the same, but it seems like the lived experience is not. And so that it is a tricky nut to crack because it's located around these light industrial and others. So it's a little different, but I don't think there should be an actual difference. And so if we can think about between now and the time this comes to council, specific ways with respect to enforcement or other things, because they do have the rules that are different than the surrounding industrial. It just seems like a separate conversation from the rest of the conversation on this issue. So that's why I wanted to sort of earmark that, see what we can do, because I think we have to focus a lot of energy on the bigger conversation. So I would like to see that. So on the specifics of the staff recommendation and the phased approach, just going to sort of jump in and and start with a few comments and see how far I get. First of all, I just want to say that I actually like that I don't see proposed action A expanding at the Baylands Athletic Center there. I appreciate you looking into that. It's a natural thing to look into since we have the Gang Road safe parking place there, but I just don't think we want to take the time and the effort to undedicate parkland to just get a few more parking places. It looks like it, given the size of this issue, if we want to try to get people into housing or into safe places to park off the streets, I just don't think that one is the low-hanging fruit. So I appreciated that. I think the van lording, prohibit renting public parking spaces. I'm on board with that and appreciate you exploring that. The additional street cleanups and sweeping also, yes. I noted that in residential areas, it's, what is it, once a week during the fall, the leaf season, and every 2 weeks during the summer or whenever it's not leaf season. If that could be amped up to once a week. And I understand that the oversized vehicles would have to be elsewhere during those few hours. So that'll be a big change for them, but I think that's something where hopefully it will benefit the residents of the oversized vehicles and sort of help them from being the good behaviors will have the bad behavior stuff cleaned up, not by the residents and businesses. So that makes sense to me. But I also understand they will require notice and signage, and there are expenses that go along with that. I think in the first instance, that's warranted, that we do pursue that. So I would encourage that be fleshed out. Is that going up? Oh, I am over my time. So let me, okay, I have a lot more to say, but why don't I just stop there and we'll just keep going around until we get through them all. All right.
I'll try to follow up on the suggestions you got through. Completely agree. I think expanding into the Baylands makes no sense. Way too expensive. The value's not there for 10 to 20 spaces. We just asked voters to approve on dedicating parkland. I fear coming back again, asking people start to see that's a trend. I think and to spend all that money on a ballot measure just doesn't make any sense to me. So I wouldn't support that. Safe parking on privately owned lots, currently in the work plan. Let's continue to move forward, even though I understand the limitations there. Expand congregation-based safe parking program. I think absolutely. Just a couple clarifying questions. Is the reason why the safe parking program operator for congregation safe parking sites just don't currently recommend OSVs being there is because of the 24-hour issue that we don't allow for 24 hours?
Thank you, council member. I I would be happy to speak to this, but we also have Amber Stein, who is the executive director of Move Mountain View on the Zoom. I know that one of the reasons that was listed had to do with the having to move every day is hard for RVs. I'm not sure if there were other operational concerns. Amber, do you have anything to add?
Good evening, Council. I think the number one is the ability to go in and out because church parking lots are not 24 hours, they're only overnight. And then the other is it took quite a bit of work to be able to have those parking lots open in churches. The churches, most of them that we deal with are right in the neighborhoods. So I think that would also be one of the issues in terms of how welcoming neighbors would be to having a church parking lot have a number of RVs that are there continuously or overnight. I think that's another consideration. And then the other part of it also is the maintaining of those, the lots that we have that are 24/7 is quite a bit of checking and balances, et cetera. And church lots sometimes use their parking lot for activities. And so are we going to have RVs parked there 24/7, but then when the church really gets full and they need their parking lot, are they going to move? There's just a lot more logistics to consider when it comes to the church lots and RVs.
Great. Thank you for that additional context. I think it's worth exploring. I think as a city, we've done a really good job at the incremental increases with our safe parking, and neighborhoods that were once resistant and fearful have found out that those concerns didn't really play out. And now I've been talking to residents who were initially, again, resisting, having no issue and not even noticing. So I think it's something to explore, again, to go back out, talk to the congregation leaders and speak with the neighbors. Maybe we can try now a pilot program with that, with 1 or 2 RVs being allowed in those lots to be able to start spreading it. So I think that's worth it. On increased cleaning and street sweeping on selected streets, I think that makes a lot of sense. The cost doesn't seem to be terrible. I am curious, Mountain View, they had a pilot pump out program. Why did that stop at the pilot phase? Why didn't they make that permanent? Was it just costs?
Thank you, council member. And I can't recollect right now exactly why they stopped, but it was right before they did a bunch of other options as well. I think they were piloting a number of things, but I could get back to you with that.
Yeah, if you could follow up with them, that'd be helpful. The enhanced services related to inhabited OSVs, I think that approach, I like the idea. I think the approach works only if we can really increase enforcement to then ensure that illegal dumping and other regulations are stopped. I feel like if we are providing the services for free for pump out, to be able to remove waste and trash and other things. I mean, if the city is going to provide those services on our own dime, I think it's absolutely appropriate that we then enforce with zero tolerance violations of that, because at that point there should absolutely be no excuse to not do so. So I think that's a really good approach, but we would need to make sure that we're working closely with PD, that the enforcement side of that is going to be addressed. And then just one more then on prohibit the renting of public parking spaces with van lords. I think this is an obvious one to do. These are public streets. No one should be profiting off of public right of ways by renting these spaces. How we draft the fee structure needs to be significant enough to make sure that people are not going to continue to violate our ordinance because they could just make more money off of it. Just one question. I understand that it could be challenging to identify van lords, staff report talked about it, but the idea that we're just going to rely on complaints from residents to be able to enforce, it doesn't seem great. But we did hear from one speaker tonight that they believe that they have identified van lords in a particular neighborhood with maybe 5 people renting it. I assume, does staff know where van lords go to be able to advertise these units? Is it on Zillow? Is it on Airbnb? Are those things? Does staff have the resources, I guess what I'm asking, to be able to monitor those, to be able to be a little more proactive in our enforcement of that?
Thank you, council member. I can't speak to the resourcing. I'd have to ask PD, but I can tell you that in the past, when this has come up, PD has done investigations and found on Craigslist, on Zillow, on Airbnb, on a variety of sites, people advertising. They may not say it's an RV, but it's very obvious from the listing that it's an RV. And I have the answer to your other question.
Oh, great.
So I pulled up the staff report from Mountain View, and they recommended to their council that because of limited pilot usage, challenges with siting, high costs associated with providing waste disposal service, and the high cost to construct a dump station on city land, and given the many other initiatives they were doing to address homelessness, they decided not to go forward past the pilot period with the pump out.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And just to start with some comments before I get into specific options, I think it's obviously worth noting the larger context that there's a race to the bottom across Bay Area cities. It is obviously not humane to move people around city to city. It is obviously also not humane to allow people to live in RVs long-term without a robust pipeline of transitional and permanent housing. So we do need regional cooperation, of course, but that's too far away for us to address right now. I'll state upfront that we definitely have to alleviate impact across neighborhoods and across sites with heavy concentration. So that includes Ventura, includes homes and businesses around East Meadow and Charleston and other areas. I'll pivot a little bit and start talking about solutions, though. I think we need to be both thoughtful and fast at the same time. So we need to be very deliberate and humane. These are difficult decisions for the council to make. This is life and death for potentially some RV dwellers. This is a weighty decision that's complicated. So we actually do need some of the public's patience in some regards. But I will say, I think we can be thoughtful and fast at the same time. So while we need to be patient and thoughtful for some items, I think we need to find where we have alignment and just move on sort of no regret kind of solutions. And we need to move on those quickly. So if there is alignment that tackling van lords is an urgent problem, I think there are options we currently have. We can tow and impound vehicles, unoccupied vehicles that we know are being leased out by van lords that are not going to disrupt or immediately impact a particular family's life. I think that we can prioritize within our current framework some of the most severe public safety and health risks. So we may know through our outreach which RVs have the most consistent dumping and most dangerous electrical setups and things like that. We can get them more focused services, and we can, if need be, get those RVs towed in a faster way, I think. Similarly, if there's alignment through the council, I would love us to be able to prioritize no parking on some bike lanes like Park Boulevard relatively quickly. So those are some tentative takes. We need to see what council lands on, but I would just encourage us to think about what we can do within our existing framework for areas where there is alignment. Let me see. Okay, I have a couple of minutes to talk about other options. And as I look at the first three options, one thing I will say is that I am a YIMBY on extremely affordable housing and RV parking throughout the entire community, and would not object to anything in my neighborhood in Mayfield, for example. So I want to talk about option A first. Expanding safe parking, I'll sort of take option A and B together. Did we consider any other approaches or any other lands, like potentially county land, or I'm thinking about the courthouse, for example, that's right by my house in Mayfield. They have a large parking lot that's just a staging area right now. Or have we thought about some of the lots like staging areas by the airport that are somewhat proximate to Gang Road? Could those let us move faster?
Thank you, Council Member. I am so excited to hear ideas from people because we have been struggling with this for a while. So when the El Camino Real Bikeways Caltrans project happened, we spent several intensive months with community partners looking at exactly what you're talking about. We looked at land near the airport, county-owned land, Caltrans-owned land. We try to leverage connections with local private land owners, and we did not succeed. We came very close at one point with a staging area for a construction site, but in the end, that did not pan out.
Okay. I hope if there are any promising leads, we can still revisit those. I agree that going to the voters to rededicate parkland is not tenable. It's just not going to succeed. It's going to be too expensive. But I hope we can continue to try to be creative. One thought I had on that was that I understand how building a permanent supportive RV community on that batting cage area would require undedicating parkland, but would temporarily just leveling the lot and letting RVs park there and letting people walk across the way to Gang Road just for, say, a year while we get our home key site set up. Like, is something like that, would that still require undedicating parkland by voter approval?
That's how we've advised the charter should be interpreted, yes.
Okay. That's disappointing to hear, but yes, it may well be our legal reality. On option C, I will also note that I'm a fan of expanding congregate-based safe parking. I think we could try to incentivize Move Mountain View and faith-based institutions to take RVs. I think that really does spread the impact throughout the neighborhoods and lets the people who care the most in the faith-based institutions really show their humanity. And actually, one more note on option B, and then I'll taper off this round, is that I would argue that safe parking should be allowed on more than just commercial lots. That if someone has that, to the extent that discussions have mentioned people growing up in Palo Alto living in an RVs now, if they have a family friend or a family member who can have their RV park in their driveway, who can actually have some sort of even hookup from their home, that is currently obviously not allowed in our municipal code, but is a solution that cities like Portland and potentially others have taken. So when we consider option B, I'd consider at least briefly looking into what a more expansive version of that could look like.
Thank you. I just wanted to add on a thought on the Gang Road. Another reason why I'm not terrifically excited about adding space around there is that in talking to some of the vehicle dwellers, it's a difficult location for them because a lot of it does not have ready access to public transit, and many of them don't have other ways of getting around. They may have a bicycle to get to a station, but that one's not very close to many, or to schools, public schools. So it's sort of tricky from that standpoint as well. But I want to focus this round on a couple of things, one that's on your list and one that's not, in terms of the proposal. I want to also talk about congregation-based parking, which for me is a big yes. I know when I was running for this office, and it was much more controversial then, and there was a council meeting like this, and I called in and I said, look, I can see one of those parking lots out my bedroom window, and I'm happy to have parking there, safe parking there. I think the minister who takes care of that church just left, but I will tell you, I assume they still have it. I don't know. That's how not disruptive it is in my neighborhood. So I am a big fan of this. I am very grateful for those congregations who have taken this on. And I very much would like to explore if there are ways to expand it. I think there's a couple of things. One that might be a little creative is, could we somehow take advantage of the fact that businesses and houses of worship tend to have opposite busy hours? So in other words, could it be that if we expanded to 24 hours in a congregational parking lot, perhaps maybe they could do it Monday through Friday. And then perhaps on the weekend, they go near, a denser industrial area where they don't have as many customers coming and going for 24 hours. So it may be too much moving around for the RV dwellers, but it just occurs to me we might be able to expand a little bit that way. And I would hope that, so I know there's two issues here. There's expanding to 24 hours for non-oversized vehicles, and then there's adding oversized vehicles. But I think that same kind of perhaps a Monday through Friday approach might add a little bandwidth there. But generally, I very much support that, and I'm grateful to those congregations. And then secondly, what's not on the list, I think it had been on one of our work plans, but was not yet resourced for lack of, for lack of the thing that to be worked on. But that is to explore the commercial lots like a little more fully. And I talked about the sort of temporary workers, like construction workers and nurses and such. And I wonder whether we could approach some of those employers and ask them if they wanted to work with us on identifying commercial lots that are unused and have space, and or even pitching in to help us lease them and service them so that we could find a place for these workers to be that is off the streets. And I know we have not identified them. I'd really like to put some more effort into identifying commercial parking spots. I know, I'm sure you've been doing that, and it's easier said than done, but I would really like to see us redo that effort. I don't know if you have any comments before I go on. It looks like you might.
Just very quickly, council member, I really appreciate that. And it would be great to have council support in lifting up that effort, should we go in that direction. And to clarify, I meant to, in the phase, to suggest that we'd explore all of the expanding options to see which one council would be okay with.
Good.
So
I'm very okay with that one. In fact, I really think there's, in some ways, the most opportunity there. And then the RV dwellers would be in a safe and clean, regulated environment. And so that particularly the ones that are good neighbors, themselves would be in a better place, and they would be off of these streets. And so I think the lower hanging fruit is perhaps some of these employers. But I also think, I will make right here, right now, a public appeal to any philanthropist, business organization. We will name the lot after you. Like, I can't commit to that. I would suggest that we name the lot after you. We will thank you. We will cut ribbons. We will do, but please work with us because this is your community. These people work in your businesses. We will be partners with you. But if you can identify and or lease to us or help us pay for it, I think that would be fair. And then that way, all, more businesses bear this burden instead of just the ones in front of which these vehicles are parked. And so that's, so I think it'd be better for the businesses that are on these 14 roads. I think it would be better for the people that don't have other alternatives until we can find them. I mean, ultimately, yes, I agree with some public speakers and my colleagues. We need to get more housing. And I'm happy that Home Key's coming online. I'm happy to see the things on the slide that talk about all the things in the pipeline, but that will take time. If we could lease a lot for 12 to 18 months even to get started, to get this transition where we could keep it cleaner, where people could be safer, I would be very much in support of that. So doing that in parallel to some of these activities that get the streets cleaner right now is what I would be a big advocate for. And I think my little rant here has taken up my time for this round, so I will stop, unless you had any response that you would. Okay, thank you.
Well, I'll second your rant, and I'm very supportive of all that. Continuing where I left off, so prohibiting storage of detached trailers and inoperable vehicles, public streets. I think that's another easy one for me, as we need to maintain public right-of-way for the use of the public, and obviously inoperable or non-motorized vehicles or trailers is a private takeover of the public right-of-way and should be prohibited. My question related to this, but also several of the other solutions that I'm about to get to. Are there approaches to enforcing an OSV ban or non-motorized or inoperable conveyances ban without having to install signs on all city streets? I mean, it doesn't seem to be, but that price tag of over $1 million and about a 5-year work plan seems, I mean, that's gonna be a lot. So.
What we'd like to do, if the committee and ultimately council endorses these two discrete ideas, is to come back with a more specific workup of how they would be drafted and what the penalties would be and how they'd be enforced. And then we can come back to council with that information.
Okay, appreciate that. All right, so then on the more challenging stuff, so then limiting oversized vehicle parking on certain streets with focused regulations. So a few questions here. First, is there a way to, because I like this idea, is there a way to limit the amount on each designated street, right? We haven't designated those streets yet. I understand that will be a part of this study, and I would imagine we would continue, and I would want to support continuing down the path of our overnight ban of no residential streets. But we need to be, and I'm sure we would be as we embark on this journey, I think we need to be more intentional and careful with where those streets are. Having streets like in Ventura that are really residential streets, even though they might be abutting commercial, that should not be allowed. We really should be looking at truly kind of more commercial streets, but also making sure that we have, I think, a diversity of those streets well spread out. Because one of the speakers who was a RV dweller spoke of not being able to access their job if they're on the other side of the 101. So we want to make sure that we're being careful of all that when we craft that. So is there a way to limit the amount of like parking spaces for OSVs on each designated street, so that, right, if let's say we designate 30 streets, we don't have all of them on 5 or 10 of them, that we can find a way to be able to evenly disperse parking spots that could be designated then for OSV through those zones?
We'll certainly, again, invite colleagues to chime in, but I think that in the work that we've done, the only real way to limit the number is to limit the overall length and really the parking for any vehicles, as opposed to focusing on restrictions for oversized vehicles in particular. So just to be clear, we really need to look at what is the overall parking capacity for, let's say, how many blocks would be involved. And that's the primary way of limiting the overall availability. There's really not a way to limit, let's say, 2 vehicles per block or anything along those lines.
Why couldn't we have a system where we, instead of, it kind of seemed like part of the staff proposal was maybe a citywide prohibition except for on designated streets where it would be allowed. Why couldn't we do something where it's a citywide prohibition except on these streets that we've designated, we will designate these parking spaces only are available for OSV. And we might be able to then tie the amount of spaces to the point in time count every 2 years. That seems like a possibility, but
I see what I believe I understand the scenario you're describing. So let's say there were specifically designated spaces for oversized vehicles. That's certainly something we could look into. I would expect that might actually increase the level of effort involved in going down the path of being able to identify locations that would meet any specific target on capacity overall.
For me, I'm curious, other colleagues, I mean, I'm curious pursuing that option of, they don't have to be OSV only, they could be the spaces that are then designated for OSV spaces. But it seems like if we are providing the capacity based on a point in time count, I think that shows we would be making an informed decision based off of the data. And I think also for me, kind of looking at, we got 401 affordable units in the pipeline. We've got Project Home Key coming online. I mean, there's a lot of work that we're going to be doing over the next several years on providing these opportunities that my hope is that we will be able to then maybe reduce that number long term. But in the short term, we need to be able to provide these spaces. So I think that's more for maybe my colleagues' thoughts. And oh, sorry, I'm over time, but this is one I mean, for me, this option, all the other seem to be more low-lying fruit. This is the one what really kind of seems to get to the issue of which we're trying to address in a way that is consistent with state law and recent court interpretations.
Thank you. And just so I don't lose the point from Councilmember Stone, San Francisco's new approach to RVs and oversized vehicles, I believe, actually applies a permit system so that existing RVs have to register with the city in some way to be basically grandfathered into still being able to park. And so I don't think anyone knows where the implementation of that program is or when that will be ready, but there's some precedent in San Francisco, and maybe there's other precedent that San Francisco looked at and considered when they advanced the idea of using permits. So that could be a way to regulate how RVs and oversized vehicles are spread. I'll go back and talk about some of the options. I think I left off at option C. I kind of talked about A, B, and C all together, and I'm glad that we'll really explore that. On option D, I am concerned about the implementation of how we manage cleaning and street sweeping on selected streets. I think we've seen cases where that just ends badly for the RV dwellers on those streets. And so I think it's important to do some sequencing in terms of services, in terms of predictable dates, with as much advance notice as possible. I expect that would be part of the plan, but of course, it's something that we want to handle as well as possible. It looked like you were about to comment, so I kind of tapered off. Sorry. Please.
I just will add, council member, these are pretty high level. I mean, we did a lot of research for these 10 approaches, but they're still not fully fleshed out. So we would take that into consideration. We currently have a standing meeting on Mondays with a representative from Outreach, from Public Works, from PD, and from Legal. So we're already setting up that sort of coordination.
Great. I think one other potential approach, and something that is maybe aligned with option E, but maybe I missed it, was not as explicit, was that we should investigate options for secure RV parking, and we should be thinking about how our home key site fits into the phases and the approaches we have. A concern for people moving from RVs to any sort of shelter is that they will lose all of their belongings, they will lose their safety net, their mobility, and they might hesitate to take any other kind of shelter as a result. We want people to go to the home key site, to have access to really rich services and actually really good permanent housing placement outcomes. But unless we can dedicate, say, again, an airport staging lot where we can securely park their RVs while they are in the home key site, where they can potentially still access their belongings periodically, I think that might be a tough sell. So as we do more outreach and think with our partners about what, how to actually get people to accept shelter most effectively, I think we could consider reusing some of our many staging areas for secure parking. Okay, I still have a bit more time. As I mentioned, at least sort of going on to the next section of potential actions to increase regulations, I am very on board with addressing vanlording and very on board with using our existing tools to address that more urgently if we can. I am a little bit uncertain about option G. I'm just not sure there's a big qualitative difference between what we would consider an inoperable vehicle versus a operable vehicle that, for all intents and purposes, maybe many of the RVs we have are just in practice not going to move at all anyways. So we're making a distinction that is maybe a little bit contrived in terms of who we would tow and who we would not. Do you have any thoughts on that, or like how should I reason about that?
Thank you, council member. There's a couple different ways to think about this. Reportedly, there are a subset of folks out there that literally store detached trailers, like trailer hitches, on our public right of way, and this would explicitly say that's not a thing here in Palo Alto, and I think there's a lot more we could explore on that, but that is the sort of scenario where we were really thinking about addressing.
Right. And if someone had an RV and a detached trailer, but then they just attach their trailer to their RV, then that would not necessarily be prohibited anymore, I guess, under option G. For example.
Well, I think perhaps the scenario you are referring to is more likely a pickup truck that the trailer is attached to. Yes, if it were attached, then it would not be in violation. But if the pickup truck is not there, then it would be a violation.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to add on this that these are the kind of details that I think we would flesh out when coming back, if this is an idea that the committee and council are interested in pursuing.
I don't remember what the chair's read on this was, but it sounded like there might be a majority, and I wouldn't object to more exploration of that, of course. Okay, I am getting over time, but I'll just briefly touch on these last couple of options, option H and option I, to limit oversized vehicles to certain streets or prohibit them on certain streets. I really don't like limiting oversized vehicles to certain streets. I think we should really push as aggressively as possible for a more creative solution here. Limiting to streets is still dispersed. It still makes services more difficult to deliver. We should have some jurisdictional control over, say, the airport lots that are currently used as staging for car dealerships. Like, we should be able to break a contract, or as city council, we can decide to ultimately put RVs there, put a mobile shower there, and use that as a temporary use, right? Like, if we really push, we don't necessarily have to even get to H if we can find another appropriate lot on city land. Like, I just want to see the reaction to that.
Sure, I think that that's fair to say. Again, we certainly would not want to need to designate streets if we could avoid it. But that said, there are constraints on other properties, some of which may exceed city council's authority, including grant assurances with the FAA on the use of land within proximity to the airport. So as well as potentially environmental issues, charter limitations, as was noted on the Baylands Athletic Center. So those are the kinds of things that do limit the council's discretion to pursue other options.
Yeah. I think in our consideration of H, we should really be clear in our staff reports that this is a last resort if every other option we explore for an actual dedicated lot fails. And if we do get to option H, one, again, spot that I would just volunteer because it's in my neighborhood is potentially along Sherman, right by the public safety building, because those parking spots are all used for construction staging right now. Okay, I think those are, that's it on option H. On option I already mentioned, I think clearing the way on some critical bike lanes makes sense and something we can do more urgently and also part of the phased approach. And yeah, those are my comments exhaustively on options A through I. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I want to note that the phased approach is not in the same order as the potential approaches in table 1. So now we're going to have to rejigger them when we get around to saying something about the phased approach to our colleagues on council. So with that said, so I'm trying to figure out on mine where I want to start because we've been jumping around a little bit. Well, let me just pick up where Councilmember Liu left off. I don't love the designating streets piece either. I would really, really rather we not do that because it just seems like we're saying to business owners, property owners on those streets that like, you're going to bear the brunt of this for the city. That said, we have to find places for the current demand. I appreciate that and want to do that, but that's why I am pushing so hard on finding these other lots and reaching out to partners who could help us, people who might, come forward. I know I can't just say it and make it so. I know we have limited options, but boy, would I like to try to find some other ones than that. For a variety of reasons, but we do have some other properties. We do have Home Key coming online. So I think that I sort of skipped over the enhanced services one. I think getting more outreach to people dwelling in these RVs so we can have a better sense of what caused them to be there and thus where else might be appropriate places for them. I really do support that. I think that would help us perhaps reduce some demand. there was also talk about, there's also mention of garbage pickup and mobile pump out. I'm going to mention something a little creative that's not easy, but so one thing I learned, and I think we heard it again tonight is that some RV dwellers actually contract themselves with people to come and do mobile pump outs and come and take their trash, which is, I was surprised to learn, but I think terrific. If what I'm wondering is other residents, like in my home and apartment dwellers sort of baked into their rent, pay for trash services and things, could we offer some mobile pump outs and garbage pickups at some nominal fee? Or they would have the alternative contracting on their own if they wanted. I presume if we could get a larger service that we could probably get a better rate. But it kind of reminds me of the weed cutting that we say, if you don't do it yourself, we're going to send someone to do it and send you a bill. Now, those are homeowners and presumably of greater means. And so we have to be aware. We don't want it to be overly burdensome, but just a thought there. Just because I know we're in a very tight budget year and I'm hoping some of these dollars can go to the more permanent solutions. But I do think that one way or another, working with those enhanced services for garbage pickup and mobile pump out is something that we should facilitate. And then back to the, I don't, well, I don't love the designate streets piece. One of the things I'm wondering is if we start to get any kind of additional lots, dedicated safe parking lots, as those come online, I think City Manager, I heard you say we couldn't do this, but then you were talking with Councilmember Stone and I sort of lost the thread. Would it be possible that we could cap the number of RVs per street? So if it were the same throughout the city, and maybe this is a question for our city attorney, but would that be something that we could do? As long as we had the same available spot. So in other words, I'm sort of queuing off the Mountain View and others, 3 miles, 2 miles designated. If instead of doing that, I don't know, if let's say we think we have 200 vehicles and we found a lot with 100 spots, could we reduce somehow the number of vehicles per block that are oversized? Because I think I hear a lot of safety concerns and people coming in and out of driveways. That's why I'm thinking of this.
Okay, so I'm hearing that if there were a solution that provided for quite a number of RVs, but some remained, what are ways that they could be dispersed to reduce impacts on any given block? So there were a couple ideas actually discussed today at council. We have also, as staff, really puzzled over this. There are both legal and administration challenges with some of the approaches, but I think there was at least one this evening that came up that I think is worth further thought on the staff side. So I'd like us to do that and continue working on that and get back to you.
That would be great. I would support that. I think that some of the things I've heard from some business owners is it's just the sheer density of them. And again, it depends on where your business is, which part of the city, but some have said, look, we've dealt with this for decades. It's okay. It's just that there seems to be a very big uptick right now. Could we have it be a less dense situation? So that's what I was wondering. Okay. Now I'm over time, but I think I'm just about done. And I want to move us to looking at the final motion. Let me just see if I have something else here. I also support the prohibition on detached and inoperable vehicle parking. I understand there are some challenges to that for people who might be relying on them, but I think that that it's not. I just don't think it's appropriate to have unmovable vehicles on our street. You mentioned fire and other safety, so I would support that prohibition. I think that takes me through most of, oh, I'm going to let myself ask one more question just so I can wrap. Back to the towing situation. Is lot availability an issue? In other words, tow lots, like, so I assume that with oversized vehicles being oversized, that from time to time, there could be an issue that we might call a towing service and they might say, we don't have room. Does that happen? And if so, roughly how frequently?
Yes, thank you for that question. And I apologize for not mentioning in this earlier for when we can tow. We have process in place for which we can legally tow. The next and the largest issue and what the community is feeling is that we will call upon our contracted tow companies and they don't have the capacity and they're limited on their resources. So this is a regional problem. It's the same, it's multiple cities drawing on the same resource. So it is an everyday occurrence and it severely impacts our ability to actually remove vehicles when we can, and that therefore the community is not seeing it.
Did you say it happens, half the time or most of the time or?
Most of the time, unfortunately,
Really?
yeah. There's very limited resources within the entire area. It's a regional problem.
Well, if we're having trouble finding safe parking sites, they're having trouble finding space to put the vehicles as well. So, okay, well, I wanted to bring that out because that's another challenge for us to overcome. Okay. All right. Well, I think, and I know we all might have, well, we're going to have more to say. We could talk about this endlessly in detail, but I would suggest we move on to just specifically trying to, I think what you want from us is some specific kind of motion recommendation for our colleagues on council. And I would suggest that we do that in terms of recommending whatever version of the phased approach we might all be able to get behind. Is that generally acceptable to try to work through that? Would that be the most helpful to staff?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, go. Does it key off of this? Because that's what I think would be the most useful. Because I've been tracking this one. Well, I think there's one preliminary comment I would make about this, which is we may want to take either a straw vote or an actual vote on the exploration of limiting OSV parking to certain streets approach, because that iterates through phases 1, 2, 3, well, 2, 3, and 4. And if we don't have a majority of us supportive of that, I think then, we would note to council that we don't have a majority of us supportive of that. So then we don't have to take it out of each one. So, well, I'll tell you what, we'll come back to your full motion. How's that? I'm gonna make a motion that we don't recommend at this time, except perhaps after exhaustion of all other options, exploring the limiting OSV parking to certain streets approach. I don't know whether I have a second to that.
So maybe we could start from the staff motion and we could just call out specific things we want to change. And so here in phase 2, the last bullet point would say that begin exploration of limiting OSV parking to certain streets should be considered after exhaustively exploring other options or something.
Or only after.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we could go through this and find the bullet points that we really disagree with, get those edited, and then we can go through like specific bullet points we want to add, and then we might not have to go like vote by vote on specific edits.
Yeah, I was just trying to get one that had a through line, but we can do it, and if it's less confusing to march through it in order, we can do that as well. I think I will say that my own motion fails for lack of a second because we have a procedural one and probably a substantive one. So let's just go ahead and do this. I think this is the way we've organized most of the rest of our thoughts. So. Okay. Why don't you go ahead and do that?
Okay, I will move the staff recommended phased approach with, I guess, probably some little modification to the, where would it be? Okay, phase 2, third bullet point on the OSV parking to certain streets. I think it would be a pro. You don't need to. I don't think you need to change the language to that, but maybe add, a sub bullet or however the clerk wants to do it. But so in there, as far as just like increased direction to staff, would be identifying non-residential and non-residential adjacent streets where OSV parking would be permitted. And to the extent possible, evenly distribute those streets across the city.
You want at the front, she's got non-residential and see identify, she's got 2. Says identify non-residential and non-residential.
Adjacent. So just go, yeah. Definitely open the language in a moment about how we can clean this up. All right, next bullet point, tie the number of permitted OSV parking on these streets to the point in time count. And I liked what Councilmember Liu mentioned about San Francisco having a permitting process. So maybe also just kind of, we can put in there and explore the possibility of a permitting of a permitting program for OSV. And then one more bullet, evenly disperse permissible OSV spots across identified streets.
Sorry, Councilmember, did I miss something?
Something happened. Yeah, there we go. Okay. And then one more bullet, evenly disperse permissible OSV parking spots across the identified streets to avoid what was the city manager's language? Thank you. To avoid overconcentration and clearly mark on those streets where OSV parking is permitted. Okay. So I think that's my motion for now. I think this strikes kind of the balance that I think staff was trying to achieve and kind of what I'm hoping for, which is continuing to permit these uses across the city, but to try to mitigate I think some of the most kind of frustrating impacts that many residents and businesses have been complaining about as far as over concentration on particular streets. I think this is fair in that we're actually using a data-informed approach by tying the number of permitted spaces in the city to our point in time count. That point in time count, of course, is not perfect, but as has been discussed today, and that's already included in the motion elsewhere, we are also identifying additional lots and programs to be able for OSV dwellers to be able to utilize. So I'm hoping, one, we're removing some of the demand for actual on-street OSV, and also trying to kind of mitigate the frustrations for those that need to continue to actually live on the street. So that's the motion.
I would be open to seconding, but I have a couple more things that I would like us to consider as potential amendments.
I think you need to second it first or not.
Oh, okay, I'll second it.
Okay. Now you can offer friendly amendments.
Okay, thank you. Just one first thing for staff on phase 2, bullet 2 on returning for direction on expanded safe parking. I know that's meant to cover options A, B, and C. We had a lot of thoughts about this around other sites, around maybe, I mentioned even incentives for faith-based institutions to accept RVs. Do you need any clarification or do you want any extra color included in the motion for that?
I think if there's interest from the committee, you can. One thing that I do think would be very helpful, just for the record's sake, is to exclude the Baylands Athletic Center, because that was pretty clear among the 3 people on the committee that that's not of interest. So that may be, if you'd want to add any other color, definitely, but I think the exclusion of the Baylands Center is something that you agreed on.
I didn't think it was included in the motion. What? Sorry, I must have missed that.
So phase 2, bullet 2, that's the one where that covers options A, B, and C. And we should just say there that accepting any safe parking site that requires voter approval.
It just requires undedicating parkland?
Yes, yeah, that's fine.
Yep, that's fine. I missed that. Thank you.
Okay, so we don't need to add more detail there. I would like for us to consider in our phases an explicit approach on how we handle the home key site and potentially secure RV parking. When the home key site is open, I would love for us to have a plan ready to store RVs from residents who have agreed in advance to move to the home key site and store their RV safely. I think that isn't quite cleanly captured in any option, like RV storage or prep for the home, or just be ready to transition on day 1 for the home key site. If that is an option to add, should we add it, and in which phase would it be appropriate to add?
If I might make this suggestion to the committee, this should really be a topic we should discuss with Life Moves and get their input. I will tell you that there are no simple solutions to that problem. And as such, I wouldn't want to have us, go off without involving our partner in that project and get their advice as to how that issue might be managed.
Yeah, maybe there's a bullet in phase 2 to consider options to consider options with life moves so that our home key site can accept RV residents quickly.
If I could comment, I would note that since we're adding that, at least initially in phase 2 is literally to follow phase 1. And so if it is something that you want to address as a part of home key, that's right around the corner.
Okay.
So we would need to tackle it early.
Okay, I was a little bit confused.
Just a point of order. I
If-
thought that phase 2 was concurrent with phase 1.
Concurrent with implementation.
I see. Thank
Which
you.
really follows, there's a lot of work that will be required in order to develop the ordinances, put together the work plans and get to the point of implementation, several months, again, as shown here, up to 4 months.
So
If I may, council member, I am working very closely with Life Moves on a biweekly basis and with Minka to discuss what we can do, just status quo, to increase the likelihood of our RV dwellers making use of home key the day it opens.
Okay.
That may or may not result in something with a monetary outlay, but we're trying to figure out what we can do in the meantime.
Right. Thank you. So Councilmember Stone, if we want to keep this last bullet in the motion, consider options with life moves to accept RV residents quickly at the home key site, would you be open to just copying that bullet into phase 1 and accepting that as a friendly amendment?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
And if it's okay with the committee, the way maybe that will be interpreted as working with Life Moves to see if there are options available.
Yes.
And so it's a little bit options available related to the parking of RVs as opposed to necessarily accepting RV inhabitants at the site, because some may be willing to give their RV up. I just want to make sure there's a small clarification there. I think you're interested in knowing if there's somewhere where RVs can be safely parked and stored.
It's the other way around.
Well, yeah, but I think that's really I think that kind of feeds into the larger goal of getting people
there.
Services and permanent housing. So that's almost like an implementation detail to the hope that we can get the right conditions that RV residents would move to the home key site.
Again, just to clarify, it's less about the storage than it is about attractiveness to those who are currently in vehicles.
Yeah, that is an
Yes,
idea
thank you.
that might make it more attractive,
thank you.
but is not the end goal. Okay, and maybe my last potential lane for friendly amendments is that in phase 1, we could consider some kind of enforcement for within our existing authority for vanlords, for bike lanes, or for blocking bike lanes, and for potentially some class of public health risks. We clearly have some discretion to tow and use our existing tools before we have a larger ordinance. And I'm not sure whether that's something that we should consider in the motion, or is something that we should consider doing as an additional approach. I'd be happy to clarify that. I see some quizzical looks. So we have some towing protocol for as Lieutenant Apple
Grossly out
mentioned.
of date registration and persistent violations of the 72-hour rule with appropriate notice. Yes.
Yes. And my understanding is that we have towed RVs in the recent past. And we are thoughtful about our enforcement, and we don't necessarily we don't necessarily use that extensively, but we can and have used that.
Connected to violations of the law. Yes. So it's not a generalized.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
For RVs that meet those conditions that may pose an especially high public health risk or are currently blocking bike lanes, or even for RVs that we know are vacant and on lease on Craigslist. We don't necessarily have to potentially take months to take some action on those cases, right?
So what you just listed is a mix of different things.
Yes, I realize.
So yes as to some and no as to others.
Okay.
Yeah, Councilmember, what is it? So they're not numbered, but bullet point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 already has in it implementation and enforcement of these actions would follow. So are you proposing something more than that for phase 1?
I think what bothers me to some extent is seeing several Craigslist posts about RVs that are vacant that are for lease.
That's
And we could
landlording.
develop an ordinance and do legal investigations and write that ordinance potentially. Or like, how long do we think actually any of these ordinances would take in phase 1?
Okay, so to clarify on van lording, we do need the ordinance.
Yes.
Unless the RVs in question are already qualifying for tow based on other existing laws. That's why
Yes.
we're recommending that council endorse this idea of an ordinance. Also, that ordinance is a fine against the landlord. It does not give the city the ability to seize property without a warrant.
Right.
So want you to understand why we need it and what it will do. We do hope and would anticipate that it would reduce the number of RVs on the street, but not through seizure of those vehicles.
Yes. I was definitely unclear and made a few leaps of logic here. I would have had a naive assumption that those van lords and listings that I see on Craigslist are just parked there and currently available for tours even, and are going to be on the same spot for more than 72 hours. And potentially, if they were given notice, those existing van lord vehicles would not actually move, because I don't know if the landlord or the van lord is like visiting the RV multiple times per week and making sure that it's not moved in 72 hours, right? And so in a hypothetical example like that, we know the van lord has a vacant RV. We know it's been there for 72 hours. There's some theoretical enforcement that we may be able to choose to do in that specific example, right?
So we are seeing situations where and we are learning this from folks living in the vehicles, that they engage in a contract, they rent the RV is parked out there, and citation 72-hour violation notices are accumulating, and they don't have the means to actually comply with the law because they're renting a trailer and not necessarily an RV.
Okay.
And then in those instances when we do tow, and we have towed an RV or trailer that is being rented out, the owner has the money to come and pay the tow fees to get the vehicle out of the storage lot and then subsequently re-rent it out again.
Right. And I would be speaking in this example, I prefaced it early on that this would be a vacant RV that is on the rental market on Craigslist, for example. And in a case like that, imposing significant time and inconvenience such that it is actually towed is not a decisive strategy for all van lords, but it is something that we could theoretically do today without impacting a specific RV resident, and that would be some penalty to a van lord. And so to step back a little bit, what would the potential timelines be to develop the ordinances mentioned in phase 1?
Yeah, so we have estimated 4 months, which includes the time to research the wording, bring forward a draft. There are going to be some details that council will want to provide feedback on. Then once council adopts something on first reading, it has to be read a second time, at least 11 days later, which is 2 weeks in our system because we meet on Mondays. And then it becomes effective 30 days after that.
Okay, so 4 months of work, some buffer time to get it onto the council agenda and for a second reading, and then another month to, so it's like maybe about 6 months to actually get the ordinance in production from the time that the full council hears this item and approves this approach.
4 to 6 months, yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm not sure, realizing the complexity that, and realizing that directing some sort of interim policy change with our existing capabilities would actually detract from those 4 to 6 months or sort of push out the timelines even more for this work. So I'll drop that concept for right now of like changing any of our existing policies. And I don't have any other amendments to consider.
All right, and so you two are square on what's in there. All right, then for discussion on the motion, I have a couple of thoughts. One is I'm a little concerned about this in phase 2 now that I understand it's after phase 1 and concurrent with phase 1 implementation. The second bullet that is captures B and C, which is return to council for direction on a preferred option for expanded safe parking except for undedicated parkland. What we're basically talking about there are items B and C, which is the commercial lot and the congregational parking. And if we don't start reaching out to figure that out, it's going to be a long time until that stuff gets enhanced. And I think that's what, by putting it in phase 2 happens. So one, I'd love to see it, since it's just 2 things, I'd love to see it be more explicit so that our colleagues and anyone looking at this record know that we're talking about private commercial lots and know that we're talking about congregations. And at the minimum, it shouldn't say a preferred option, because I don't think that any of us up here tonight have said we need one thing. I think we've all said we need both things.
Yep.
So, but I don't know. I guess I would look at staff to say, is that too much? When I look at phase 1, I see a lot of ordinance drafting. I know that's a group project, but I don't see, what I was hoping is some of that outreach and some of that pursuit of those 2 things could get started sooner. Is that possible?
Well, I'll let staff speak for yourselves here, but perhaps with the wording, instead of a preferred option, you'd say expanded safe parking at commercial and congregational properties.
I would offer that friendly amendment if the maker and the seconder are okay with that.
I'm fine with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
That said,
Now, yes.
I think I'll reflect on the conversations I've had with staff, which is in terms of call it the bang for the buck and the number of spaces to be gained based on with the effort involved. The safe parking spaces are, we'll say, double-digit figures as opposed to what we're dealing with is a triple-digit issue. So I'm not sure how much time we'll be able to dedicate to the safe parking specifically while we're trying to address the citywide on-street issues. That said, I think certainly, well, this, and I think Ms. Matana alluded to it, but to the extent that council members are actively engaged in the conversations and seeking properties, including congregations that may be open to the idea that can help facilitate our ability to act on it.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. And I would ask staff, like, for example, Multi-Faith Voices for Peace and Justice. I don't know if you would be okay if I or one of you would want to go to one of their meetings, because there's a lot of faith leaders there who might be interested and could help spread the word. I'd want to make sure I had the accurate thing, but would things like that be, do you have any concerns about that, or?
I see no concerns with that.
Because that might be a quick way. But that said, I do appreciate that we're not talking a huge number in faith-based parking lots. I get that. I was hoping that if we got lucky and got one empty commercial parking lot, we could have a big number, in double digits, but double digits high enough that it would take a decent proportion, so that it would sort of diffuse the remaining demand on the streets, so making it easier to clean them and monitor them and provide services to them.
Agreed. And once again, with recognizing limited bandwidth to do outreach to industry as a whole, if
Yes.
there are relationships and leads that can be identified, that would help.
That's terrific. Well, maybe, my colleagues and I, we can talk to folks at some of those organizations in the community and see what we can do. Okay, but yes, I would like that to be there. It's still in phase 2 right now, so I guess I heard that it might be a gentle start, but it would be acceptable to staff to put it in phase 1, I think, no?
So, Councilmember, just to set some expectations, for all of the items in phase 1, I would be the lead coordinator. And my bandwidth would be stretched very tight to do the ones that are there right now.
Yeah, and I could add that the work on the safe parking on private property would really be led by our planning staff, who are, again, quite frankly, focused on the housing element implementation. So this would require reprioritization of other work that they are pursuing as well.
Got it. Well, maybe that's something when it returns to council, we can discuss and see if my colleagues want to accelerate, and perhaps you could think about some of our Director Lake could think about some of the different things that might need to shuffle around where we to prioritize that. I'm just worried about the length of time until we get any of those lots. I was hoping they could, well, anyway, I'm just concerned about timing of that. So I guess unless one of my colleagues wants to go ahead and move that there, I'll just leave that there, but I will be raising that at council just to see if we can accelerate that. I honestly think that's how we're gonna solve this thing ultimately. So that's why I'm so eager to get going. I would put it in phase 1, but we have staff concern about bandwidth. Okay. All right, why don't we put it there, and then if the staff can say the same thing at council, and we can move something else off if what. So
personally, I would consider maybe trying to order things within the phases to say that is a higher priority than, for example, small-scaled services pilot. Or another thing I guess we could theoretically consider, if it's okay with staff, is maybe rearrange the prioritization of street cleanups versus expanded safe parking.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that last one?
So I definitely agree on phase 1, bullet points 1 and 2, but 3 and 4 could potentially move to phase 2. Arguably, if it is equivalent work or the kind of juggling that staff can accommodate.
Yeah, maybe make a suggestion that we ask staff when they come back for the council discussion to kind of inform us better on what are we going to get the best kind of bang for our buck and maybe a recommendation from staff on how to best prioritize some of these things? Because I'm kind of
Sure.
worried about it doing
Happy to
it
do
right
that.
now.
Taking into account the comments shared by council members.
Yeah.
All right, let's go with that. I'm just concerned that we're only doing cleanup for 4 to 6 months, and we're not doing anything to start creating more spaces. And I don't think that's going to be a fast process, so that's my concern.
No, and I mean, really, like within the actual, instead of like trying to reorder things within each individual phase.
Oh, I'm sorry, that they should instead of we.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm just thinking if it's a different department that's going to be doing the expanded safe parking, I'm going to offer a friendly amendment to move that to phase 1, and then staff can explain to us at council that there is no bandwidth, having explored it from the planning department, or that we would have to not do X in order to do it. I'm just very concerned about getting that. So you can accept or reject that. Oh, I don't know, but still. Yeah, so phase 2, bullet 2, moving it up to phase 1?
Yeah, so I thought I already accepted it. I'm fine
sorry.
with that, and then
What
council can discuss it.
Are you okay with
Yeah.
that? All right, so Madam Clerk, and with apologies to staff, we
Yeah.
will have a full discussion at full council. But since we have some, since it was some staff who aren't here, I think, or are they online?
I'm sorry, which staff are you looking for?
Well, Director Late.
Yes. I think he's online.
Uh-oh, now I'm in
Sorry, we're
trouble.
looking at the
Director
very
Late.
tiny text motion, so we stopped looking at the Zoom attendee list. Give us a second.
Director Lee, are you
There he is.
tracking the conversation and able
Yep.
to weigh in?
Thank
I
you.
am. I'm here, and I don't have anything more to say than what City Manager Shikata mentioned. There will need to be a reprioritization of non-housing element related council priorities, and we're happy to share that when this comes back to council.
Thank you. And I realize we'll have to think seriously about that, but I would feel more comfortable doing that.
And
All right.
Chair Vinker, if
Yes.
if I
Sorry.
can offer, part of the consideration for the safe parking lot expansion is the identification of a lot, which I know that you had interest in the city council also participating in some of those conversations. So the part that Mr. Lade is speaking to is the actual sort of documentation we'll have to do, which is still pretty extensive. But the identification of a lot almost, sort of pushes that a little bit further in conversation than the work that we will need to do to make it, what do you call it, lawful to do whatever the interest is.
No, thank you for that clarification. So does staff anticipate that they would not be doing any work on the identification piece? Or you're saying that's just not Director Late's piece?
Yes.
Well, maybe to state it a little more practically, what is on the work plan is, quite frankly, look at the rules and then how they might be applied, as opposed to if we have a site identified, then we can look specifically as to what it would take in order to enable and put into action a safe parking in a particular site. So I expect both scenarios are quite a bit of work that's involved, but I think we get further along to a solution if we have a site identified.
Oh, clearly. I just didn't know who was going to take the lead on trying to identify sites.
Well, quite frankly, again, given the list here, that if council members or other community members step forward with suggested sites, that would be the ideal. If, on the other hand, staff has to do a comprehensive outreach to make that invitation, that again, like any other type of marketing, is going to be at best a shot in the dark. I think it will be much greater effort and much less in terms of results.
So agreed. I do think, though, that there are some much more obvious places to start than just scattershot. And I think we've talked about some of them tonight. But I also the next thing I was going to get to is I'm still not excited about phase two, what's now the new bullet two. I do not support limiting OSV parking to certain streets. So if I could say it and make it so you'd look for sites and not do this. Now, obviously there's two here who want this, so I'm, outnumbered, but I'm just concerned about identifying these streets. I think once you do, you're never going to take them away. I think it's again just sort of odd to say these parts of our city will house and host these OSVs. It just seems like a strange thing to me. I would rather solve the root problem, which is creating safe parking and/or housing for them. So I think that's part of the disconnect here in terms of. And so I'd like it to be in there. So let's have this discussion at full council, because if full council is on board with phase two, item 2, then we still have this significant tension. If, however, they have a different view, then there might be more bandwidth for the find the sites. So, but if you can give me just one moment. One thing we didn't talk about that I wanted to offer a friendly amendment on to see what folks think about it is in the staff report, it mentioned a buyback program. And I think that's very interesting to do, because when you look at what Berkeley did, they had a fairly big bang for the buck. I think the investment was, I had the notes here somewhere, like 125,000, and they got 21 RVs off the streets, something like that. And I think it's worth just exploring and offering those stipends. So let me explore their thoughts, my colleagues' thoughts on it by offering a friendly amendment, and we can put that in phase 2. I won't push more into phase 1.
Well, to be clear, that with the additional number 6, phase 1, number 6, a buyback is certainly a part of potential strategy for making the home key site attractive.
So maybe we should say including a generalized buyback program, because I assume it would also apply to people who might not go into home key.
Yes.
Well, I think buyback programs should only work in conjunction with some good path to permanent housing. I think buying back an RV and that's it. Like, it's not exactly the Berkeley program. So I think having some connection to another program instead of a general RV buying program, I think would potentially be most effective.
So I don't know the details of it, and I don't know that we want to get deeply into it tonight, but I think that if the general underlying thing is that people are going into either home key or some other housing by working with outreach or other folks, that's fine. It's not just we're going to give you money and now you're unhoused.
Yeah.
So I was just assuming that was implicit, and that would be part of what staff would come back with.
Okay.
But I think we should ask the mover.
No, I agree. And it seems like from what the city manager said, it's already incorporated into phase 1, 6. So fine with me with that understanding. I don't think we need to amend the motion for that.
You don't think we need to say buyback because it would only apply to the home key site? Because that's what I read 6 to be.
Or at the home key site or other
affordable
housing options.
That's fine.
That's my point.
Work? Okay. And I definitely agree with you, Chair, that limiting OSV parking to certain streets is an absolute last resort. I don't know how to make that. I don't know whether we want to make that clear in the motion. I think we've all expressed that thought. But I agree that putting the exploration of alternative sites in phase 1 is the right ordering if we really do want phase 2 bullet 2 to truly be a last resort.
Can I ask a question of the chair? Because I agree. None of us want phase two, bullet two. That should be a last resort. But I think the reality is it's going to have to happen. There would have to be such a re-engagement and renewed interest and level of success that we have not yet seen on the safe parking. I hope it is more successful. I just don't see it closing this gap. So would you prefer then, I guess, no limitations on OSV on streets, or total prohibition? Because that's what I was trying to get to with what I kind of see as a compromise to be able to allow it in more targeted, intentional areas.
I mean, it's effectively what we have now. I think that most of the RVs have found areas outside of residential zones. We're going to try to clean up where that's not the case. I think they've effectively self-selected into these zones, and I don't know that we want to make them more formalized with the city imprimatur on them. So, it's just not an option I support. But I don't mind at some point that we begin exploration of it. I think that the staff report that goes to council can note dissent, and I'm debating whether I want to carve out that one. But I think part of it is whether we want this to go. Part of this is whether or not any of this can go to council on consent, but it's such a big issue with such big interest that I assume we're going to be putting it. So I guess that's the question. What is the intent if this were unanimous? Was staff considering putting it on consent?
That really is at your discretion to a large extent. Even if it is unanimous, the committee can say you'd like to have it be an action item.
Yeah, I just also want I also want there to be speed. The risk of it getting pulled if it's on consent is very high. So I think we probably ought to agendize it fully. So then it wouldn't matter if I back out of that one. Okay, well, let's do that. I'm still being dense on 6. Why we're not putting buyback in there? Is it just because we believe I agree we don't need a new one, but I just, again, want people to understand that there was a consensus around that?
Well, we could do work with life moves, such as parking or buyback, or at the very end of work with life moves, consider options to accept RV residents quickly at the home key site or other housing options. Such as a buyback program or parking program.
Ask the mover first. How are you?
Well, sorry. Yeah. I was going to suggest similar language. That's fine.
And could it say such as a buyback or a parking program?
Sure.
I got a shirt on my left. I'm indifferent. I just wanted expressly stated because I think it'll be important for our colleagues to see that we had interest in that. Okay. I don't have anything more. Does anyone else have anything more?
I mean, my only response, the additional language on phase 2, bullet 2. I agree I agree with it was the status quo I felt as it was proposed by staff, but that's why I think some of these additions are trying to really make some of the changes that we've heard from impacted neighborhoods and businesses about what is the most challenging part of our status quo, and that's why I'm hopeful that staff is going to be able to come back, especially with trying to avoid overconcentration and actually having permitted parking spaces rather than what it is now, which is just you can park on the street anywhere. There's no limitation. I think having that certainty and that consistency for those neighborhoods is going to be a significant change and an improvement. And the other options of either allowing OSV anywhere in the city or prohibiting it anywhere in the city. Both just don't seem like the right move at this time.
And I just want to commend you on the sub bullets. I like the sub bullets if I were, and I appreciate the intent there. I just think I can't get behind phase two, number 2. All right, anything more on this? Because I do want to say before we vote that I really do appreciate staff organizing this like this, and the public for hanging in there during this tough conversation, and for my colleagues. This is not an easy thing. We're going to keep talking, but darn it, looks like we're going to get going. And I appreciate there's a lot of honesty in this room tonight, and I do appreciate that. So with that, I think we'll move to a vote. But I would like to, what's the right word for it? I would like to give me the right words.
Are you separating out the motion?
Thank you. That's what I'm trying to do, is to separate out phase 2, bullet 2. We'll vote on that first, then we'll vote on the full motion.
All right, are we ready for the vote on just this portion?
Yeah, and just for clarity, that's putting that in phase 2. So in phase 2, begin exploration. Yeah. And thank you for your patience, Madam Clerk. You have the toughest job in the room. So yes, you can call that vote when you're ready.
Councilmember Liu,
Yes.
Councilmember Stone,
Yes.
Chair Binker.
No.
Motion carries 2-1.
All right. Thank you. And if no further discussion, we can go to the main motion.
Vice Mayor Binker,
Yes.
Councilmember Stone,
Yes.
Councilmember Liu.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Well, thank you all. I guess the last agenda item is our next meeting. Deputy City Manager, after all that, do you know when our next meeting is?
I could tell you the date as of this moment. Your next meeting is the second Tuesday of September. I believe that's September the 9th. And we have at least one audit item that day and maybe 2 other referrals. We're figuring that out before print this Thursday.
Excellent. And also thank you to all our staff that have stayed in the room and online till so late tonight. We know it took quite a great number of you to do this, much more than normal. So thank you all for staying in there with us tonight. I think with that, we are adjourned.